Better add myself to the stage. Oh man, it's one of those days. There we go. What's going on? Hope everybody's having a happy hump day. Before we get started, I want to put some prayers out there. Uh, Tom's wife, Ginger, still in the hospital getting medicine for her kidney infection, real bad kidney infection. So let's all keep her in our prayers. And Tom both. Hope she's doing better. She said she's doing better today, so that's some good news. But yeah, she's real bad infection. So let's keep her in our prayers for some speedy healing. And let me get these links out. So I was sitting here, can't believe I had this thing queued up to start at 8. I was sitting there about 15, 20 minutes sitting here reading Facebook. I look down, it's 8:03. I'm like, damn, man, time just, man, you start reading some of this stuff and just time just, I don't know what happens to it. It just takes off on you. It flies, man. All right, let's see. Let me get my link. I guess that's it. That's it. Oh, got me shared to the groups. So what's going on hump day? I still hadn't got my apple done. But we'll definitely get her done here shortly. Let me get these links shared out there. So I've noticed a lot of kind of copy. I don't know. I guess I call it copycat groups popping up. Um, there's a lot of groups out there, and y'all really, when you join a lot of these shine groups and other groups on Facebook, before you join them, go to the admin section, go to the members, and then look at the admins, and uh, and see who actually has this, and who's running it, because a lot of times it's somebody from out of state, or from out of the country. I mean, and they have create these groups and they copy and paste other stuff, and they copy a lot of stuff from Discovery Channel and a lot of stuff about Amanda and a lot of other people, and just start pasting it to this page, and it looks real official and everything. But there's a lot of groups out there, and they're just doing it to get your information so they can try to hack into you, and B, so they can, I guess they get paid by clicks or something, and I don't know how they're getting paid. I've never received a penny for any of my groups, and I got some with over 20,000 in it, but I don't really know what their motivation is. I don't know if they're getting paid or exactly what, but I do know that they're not legit, and a lot of times it's Pakistan, Bangladesh, who knows where, and it's just I saw a group on earlier, and this is about Kentucky, and I was about to join it and everything. And I'm like, let's see, and it's some people from I think India or somewhere. What the hell I know about Kentucky? But posting lots of stuff. I guess going everywhere, copying and pasting stuff from. I guess they get into the news, and just start repeating news and copy and pasting everything they can find. Maybe they have AI doing it. Probably have AI, searching and finding all this stuff and posting it. And yeah, it's crazy. Let me get these links shared. Well, let's see here. Well, looks like Tracy's got him a jar of peach cobbler on his page. Oh, that's Mark posted that. I guess what Mark won with, wasn't it, a peach cobbler? That's funny. And congratulations to Mark Morgan winning that big steal down there in that competition in Arkansas. I hope they have something like that. They don't have nothing like that in Clinton, I guess. But yeah, I think he won with the peach cobbler. Congrats. Looked like he got a nice little steal out of it. And bragging rights. That's more important, right? Nobody cares about that little steal. It's them bragging rights that matter. Now let's see. So yeah, check the groups out. Make sure they're legit. And just because you see a few members that look familiar in there, because every time I go to one of those, I see a lot of people I know. It shows you people that you know and stuff. And it's like, now why in the hell would you be in this group? These people, I don't even know what they're telling you. They can't even speak a language, so I don't even know how they run these things. But kind of strange. That's why I try to keep mine to people I know. People I'm familiar with. Let me see this one. I'm not sure about this one. Let me see. Yes. Yeah, these are some people from Brazil, but I think these people are actually in the DIY page. Yeah, these people are in the DIY page. So they're a steel builder down in Brazil. They make a lot of nice stuff. Have some also from Italy. So if you're in Europe, you can give these people a shout. Let me get a few more out. There you go. And I knew they was going to stop me. I'll post that one again here later. They'll let me in there. All right, now I can see. So I want to tell everybody, when I'm posting links like that, I can't see any of the comments or anything like that. So if I don't reply to you and I'm being kind of quiet and talking about posting links, it's because I cannot see that. One of these days I'm going to do two screens and I can do stuff I want and watch the other. But anyway, how's it going, Stuart? Good seeing you, brother. Oop, there we go. All right. Somebody said last week that they liked showing the comments. So if you can read those, if you're on a PC, you can probably read those. I did send so far a couple of messages to StreamYard letting them know, yes, we like that. But we would like for it to be bigger, So I'd like for it to take up at least that left side, as big as the picture is that I'm in, so everybody can read it. Now, if you're on your phone, you're probably not going to be able to read that unless you got a big phone, or I don't know, maybe you can pinch and zoom in on it or something. I don't know. What's going on, Chris? What's going on, Jason? What's going on, Dwayne? Hell yeah, man. Gotta love that moonshine. So what kind of shine you making out there on the West Coast? Some say that, a lot of people say it's the best coast. I don't know. I have been on that Pacific. That water is kind of cold though, man. I don't know. I've been from, I guess, San Francisco all the way on down to San Bernardino in LA, and in between. Not been on down to San Diego though, and I haven't been in Northern California. But from San Francisco to LA, we traveled up and down the coast there, and man, that water's pretty chilly. What's going on, Mike? Good to see you, brother. All right. I tried a teaspoon of the flavoring, the 1-to-1 simple syrup, and then 1 teaspoon to a quart and ruined it. Watermelon flavor. Oh, what kind of flavoring? Oh, the Olive Nation. Man, I tell you what, it's not here anymore. I've tried that on my peach and for last year's peach competition, and I usually use Monin or Tyranny, but this time somebody suggested that I try the Olive Nation, and I'm like, okay, these. I read reviews on it and had some pretty decent reviews, and it's TTB as you stated, and so I said, well, I'll infuse with that, and let's give it a shot. I should never have done that on a competition. And a week before, so this is done deal. This is it, one shot, one run, kind of like I did this year with the watermelon, right? The week of, I procrastinate, in case you haven't noticed, but yeah, I used it, and I mean, it had a decent flavor. The Shy did itself. And I guess the non-sugar sweetener that it has in it imparted an interesting kind of sweetness. It wasn't good or bad. It was just kind of odd. Big Easy noticed at first. He's like, that's kind of, it's sweet, but it's different. I guess it was the sugar-free sweetener that was carrying forward, right? And it just didn't have the peach. It had a good flavor. It was a good drink. I mean, it was a good tasting drink, but it just had absolutely no peach at all. None, nothing, nada, zilch, none. And I tried different concentrations of the stuff, and it's supposed to be highly concentrated. And I tried different concentrations of it, and nothing, and I didn't actually try to post flavor with it yet. I'll probably do that and try it and see. But yeah, it wasn't nothing. Didn't do a thing. Didn't help at all. But I've heard a lot of good things about the Olive Nation, so I'm not going to dog them across the board, and say it's all not good. And maybe the stuff made with the sugar. I think I got the sugar. Let me go check. I don't want to tell you the wrong thing. Hold on, let me check that. Oh, shit. Yeah. I'm taking that shit upstairs. I ain't gonna go fetch it up there, but I'm pretty sure it's the sugar-free version. I didn't want the sugar. I didn't want to sweeten it because that would not want to ruin the flavor with it. But anyway, so you did the watermelon, and it's not good either. So I guess I'm just gonna give up with the Olive Nation. Yep. So I guess it's maybe. I mean, I put it in an infuser, so it's not like I didn't put it in the actual mash. When I was getting ready to run it, I put it in an infuser, and it should have infused over, and I got nothing. So, well, it's not ruined. I can tell you that it's not ruined. If you want to put it back in the pot and rerun it, it'll take every bit of that out of there. You won't even know you ever put it in there. So it's not ruined. It's just an inconvenience. You will have to run it again. So next mash, just add it to it, and it'll run it, and it'll take every bit of that out. But it's just a shame. Hello, Miss April. How you doing? Hope you're having a good Wednesday. What's going on, Mr. Baker? How you doing, brother? Good to see you. Tastes like Ryan. Well, that's what if you ferment watermelon and you leave all that pulp in there, it's going to taste like Ryan. If you leave any of the white, a lot of that, if you scrape it down and get a lot of the white rind in there, it's going to taste like melon. Just rind. It'll taste like a melon, but not a watermelon, right? It's going to taste like kind of a cantaloupe melony, and it's not bad. It's just not what you're looking for. It's not a watermelon shine, and you watch it on the show and they cutting up all those watermelons, throw it in rind and all, and fermenting it and stuff, and talking about, oh man, just knock you down with watermelon flavor. You know that ain't real, right? That's not true. It tasted like shit, I'm sure. But yeah, if you get any of that in there, or if you ferment on the pulp with the pulp on it'll get rindy tasting too, and it also get a lot of heads, because a lot of that's just like a cellulose. And like we've talked about in the past, when the enzymes are there to do it, right, naturally. So when they start working on some of that cellulose, it's just going to add to the head count, and methanol. So it increases the heads. So and the flavor is just, I'll never do watermelon again. I fooled with it. The wine wasn't good. Well, I'll take it back. One of the I did three different type watermelons. I did the long seeded watermelon, that has the lime green, dark green kind of, variegated on the outside. And then I did the real dark green round ones, that real red on the inside, and just real dark green, solid dark green. And then I did the seedless, and then I did the seedless round ones that look like a regular seeded ones with the variegated lime green, darker green, stripes and tiger stripes, whatever you want to call it. Variegated, I guess the term. But it was seedless. So I tried all three different types in separate wines, right? And I will say the best wine came from those dark green seedless ones with the real bright red. I did them all the same sugar, same everything, got the same yeast, everything. So the dark green ones were the most pleasant out of the other ones. Now the other seedless one was okay-ish, not really good. Yeah, not good. And then the long seeded kind, it smelled and tasted horrible. So that was my experience with those. But the only ones that made even an okay-ish one, if you want to say that, would have been the dark green one, and it wasn't really good either. It wouldn't have been a good wine. So I'm thinking, best way to do, anything with watermelon would be post flavored, because it does not make a good wine. What's going on, Morgan? Good to see you, brother. They love it. What the Olive Nation? I've heard that too, and I'm not sure. Maybe with post, I don't know, but it certainly didn't work out for me in my infuser. It's on the peach. I haven't tried anything else with it since. I generally stick with the Monin or Tyranny. What's going on, Wayne? Good to see you, brother. Northern Girl Hobbies. Welcome to the show. Let's see. Good evening. Make my own wine, but have yet to do beer or shine. I was sent hops. Do I add some of the hops to the beer kit? Well, if you're making beer, for beer, yes, absolutely. You'll want to use your hops and make your beer. But if you're planning on distilling it, I would leave the hops out, and a lot of things that create a lot of oil. It's really oily, and it's really kind of skunky, and it's I guess tough to clean out. You have to clean and scrub your steel real well, and everything that comes in contact with it. So I've not done beer with hops. I've not done hops, but from my reading, it's something that it's really not worth the trouble. But you know, tell us about some of your wines. We certainly enjoy wine making and brandy making, and basically, our corn mashes are beers. We just don't add hops, right? I mean, we use barley, we use, all the different grains, corn, wheat, oats, and rye, and all that. But we don't use the hops. Well, that's kind of something that we just leave out of the beer making. So, um, yeah, tell us about some of your wines and what are some of your best wines that you make? That's good to hear, brother. What's up, Bob? Bob, how is feed store molasses for? Is it worth trying? Well, the first thing you want to check on your molasses is it unsulfured? A lot of the sulfured, no, definitely don't want any sulfured molasses at all or blackstrap or any of that. It's more of one of the lower grades. I'll say it's not horrible. Uh, it's probably going to be okay to make, like, if you want to make your own sweet feed, mix that with corn but you don't want to use sweet feed because of the pellets and all the minerals and other things that they add for the animals. So sweet feed's really not a good way to go. But a lot of people will use that molasses with corn to make their own sweet feed because they like the rummy corn liquor flavor they get by making their own sweet feeds with it. Me personally, I never really liked it much. It's kind of a funky. It's just too much. I'd rather have rum or wine, or I mean corn liquor. But I would got me thinking about wine. That Northern Girl. But yeah, I'm not into the combo. It's just, but I like both individually. I did pull up a chart a while back about that, and let me see if I can find that real quickly. It was about the different grades of molasses. Let's see if I can find it in my file here. Um, let's see, I can't see a damn thing. Oh, yeah. I got a 32-inch screen and I still can't read the damn thing. I guess I have to make extra large icons. They're already extra large, man. I'm in trouble. Full blind. Somewhere in all this mess, let me see if I can just search for molasses in my distilling files here. Yeah, here we go. All right, this is talking about different. Let me take that out, Bob, for you. Now, this is just talking about different grades of molasses, and you'll see the different brie and ash content in each of them. And as the quality goes down, the brie goes down, the ash content comes up, and the sugar count kind of goes down. I would say what you're dealing with here is probably going to be. Let me take this out so I can read the rest of it. Now, is it fertilizer grade or is it C grade? If it says brie on it, see how much ash is in it and total sugars. Because it looks like awful at the bottom is about the same as not awful at the top, and I'm not sure exactly how you would grade it because both of those look like it has about the same, except it doesn't have anything about invert 6 to 22%. So basically, it's going to be hit and miss. I know the stuff that Fibula and them get in the buckets is a good grade. It's something that you'd make muffins and stuff with. I'm not sure. I would say it's fine though. It's just you're not going to get 100% conversion with it. It's not going to all convert out. So all those aren't fermentable sugars that are in it. So you're going to get, more of the flavor from it, but you're still going to have to check your gravity, and it'll fool your hydrometer because of its thickness, because hydrometers basically measure the viscosity, right? And it's going to make it extra viscous without the sugar, so it's going to think it's more syrupy than what it actually is. So it might kind of fool your hydrometer a little bit, and you're not going to get a real. It's not going to finish out, so you're going to have some residual sugars, unfermentables. Now, I will say if you use a rum yeast, they include in it an amylo pectin that is, let me see, let me pull this up for you. It contains enzymes in the yeast itself, and this is a special rum yeast. A lot of people use it, and it. Let's see if I got a picture of it here. I think I took a picture of it. We were talking about it. Yeah, here we go. A few episodes ago. But this Distillers rum yeast here, this contains an enzyme in it that will help break down those what's called a limit dextrin. It's an unfermentable sugar, and it'll help break those down into fermentables. And let's see if it says on it. Yeah, it's got an amylopectin enzyme in it that will take care of those limit dextrins. So that's real good to use, and it'll finish it out dry for you, because we get a lot of people when they do a lot of rum, so it'll be like, it stopped at 1020 and it won't go any further no matter what I do. I've added nutrients, I've added more yeast, I've done this, check the pH, I've done everything, and nothing's working. The temperature's right, everything's right. It should be finishing, but it won't, because those are just unfermentable sugars, and you can't make the yeast eat them. It's too big for their mouths. So you got to break them down so they can fit them in their little mouths and they can consume them. So that's why. Yeah, post flavoring with the Jolly Ranchers, it does make good shine. I don't care what anybody says. I like it, and I like the green grape ones. Those make a really good shine, and all the different flavors. But in fact, I got a big old bag of them in there, and I had to go through and separate them out because I got a big mixed bag, and so I had to go through and separate them all out. But yeah, believe it or not, adding some Jolly Ranchers to a quart jar and just letting them, you shake it up every once in a while and let them dissolve in there. It's quite tasty. I like it. But yeah, it's not going to be clear. It's not going to be clear for sure. I mean, it's clear but colored, right? You can see through it, but it's just colored, right? It's not. It doesn't make it real milky or hazy. Mine didn't, but it does make it colored. It's not. You can tell it's been posted. Yeah, yeah, it does. What's going on, Henry? Good to see you, brother. Yeah, the citric acid, adds a sour note. I've noticed a lot of people like using it for, if they have something real sweet and flavorful, but they just want to kind of make it sweet and sour at the same time. I know Damon uses that with, oh, I'm giving some of his secrets away, but Damon uses it for some of his Sour Patch Shine that's kind of sweet and sour. I love that stuff, man. It's so good. It's sweet and sour, man. It's one of my favorites of the flavored shines. Um, I don't know. It's just I like the flavor of it. I think first time I tried that was at Beattyville last year, and he brought some of that, and I tried it. Man, I was like, man, I need more of this. It's real good. Probably my favorite though. I mean, I taste a lot of different flavored shines, but I like a flavored shine that you can still taste the alcohol in. And a lot of the stuff I tried at Farm to Bottle this year was damn good. I mean, it was sweet, it was really good, but I couldn't tell that there was any alcohol in it. It was like 30 proof or something. It's like, I've tasted stronger wines, and it's it's just not enough. I like my root beer. It's 100 proof root beer. It's 100 proof and has the really strong, good root beer flavor, and I like it that way. I like having whiskey, but I want that flavor, right? Or liquor with that flavor. Um, Malt extract. Oh, you're not going to distill it. I'd stay away from it then. If you're talking about the feed store molasses and you're just going to use that, I would get a higher grade. Um, I'm not sure how far north you are. I know Fibuli and Big Easy in Ohio, they've got a pretty good line on this Black Pearl. I think it's called molasses or something. Don't quote me on that, but it's a high quality molasses. Um, it's actually a premium grade. It's not the best, but it's like a premium. It's a grade A. I think it's definitely maybe it's top shelf fancy, but it's definitely a something that you could make food, candy and muffins and stuff like that with. It's intended for that. Whereas the bottom one is probably going to be the feed store, and especially do check to make sure that it's unsulfured because a lot of that stuff's not. And I will say with a lot of the cheap stuff, what they do is they cut it green before it's actually ready, and they run it through and they sulfur it to I don't know to get the sweetness, and it's just it doesn't it's not as good. It's definitely noticeable difference. Are you? I'm telling you, man, it's good, but don't expect. I think the biggest letdown on a lot of people when they do brandies is their expectations. They have expectations of a mixed drink, and when you make a brandy, if you drink a brandy and you can tell what fruit it was made from and it has a decent flavor, that's a good brandy. Especially if it hadn't been post flavored. Post flavored is just cheating. But if you can taste a brandy and you can say, I can taste the peach in that, or wow, I can taste the apple in that, or whatever fruit it was made with. If you can taste that fruit in there and it wasn't post flavored, then that's a good brandy. You have a successful run, and that's how delicate the flavor is of these brandies that haven't been posted. Now, I will say with the new infusion. The jar rigs and the infusion chambers, the multiple, that's definitely increasing the game. It's definitely increasing a lot of flavors in the distillate and the final product, um, without puking over or something like that. So it's definitely helping out a lot. So if you can get a couple 2 jar rig or something like that, or three, I mean, I wouldn't go crazy with the 40 different jars around the canopy like they did on the show and all that silliness. But a 2 or 3 jar rig does add a lot of flavor. It'll pick up quite a bit of that flavor after going through several of those like that. So a lot of successful runs, and some of the better brandies have been done that way that I've tasted at a lot of the competitions and stuff. So um, I'm gonna start making. I'm gonna make me some. I'm gonna do copper instead of having a jar that you have to take off dump and or that you can refill. Um, I'm just gonna make some copper ones. I don't really need to see inside of them. Um, I guess you could put a little sight glass or make one with a big T or something if you want to go all out and spend a lot of money. But I'm just gonna I'm gonna make some with copper, put a drain in the bottom and infusion port in the top, and it'd be like a little mini thumper with an infusion port and drain. Basically, all they are. But that way you can drain it out and reinfuse, and because you need to continuously reinfuse. A lot of people just try to use that one jar throughout the run, and even with a bypass, it's still not going to be enough. You're going to have to infuse a lot. And most people with that infuse, with these infusers, about every quart that comes out, they put another jar of infusion in there, and it's got about, the third of the way full of the infusion and stuff. So they just dump that out, put in another third, screw it back in, and hope you didn't lose too much, or use your bypass if you want to be safe about it. But yeah, but brandies are a lot of fun. I like wine, and I'm starting to drink a little bit more wine these days, and I really enjoy, making wine and making, fine wine. And so once you learn to do that, your brandies will get better too. And once you let that wine age a little bit, it improves the quality of your brandies as well. So, and that makes a good infuser, to use that wine in your infusion pots. So that helps too. None of this is easy. I've seen you around a while, Buck. No, it isn't easy. Anybody that said it's easy hasn't done it, or buys their stuff pre-made, just pours it in the pot and then runs it right. Buy a box of wine, and like, you can do that. You go buy a box of cheap wine and just put it in a little still and run it, and have no time in it at all, and just make you some brandy. And I've actually tasted some decent box wine brandies that people have made, but I would say that would be the easiest way. But to impress your wife, I mean, I don't know. Uh, Mine was most impressed with my wine, so that was kind of an easy impression. My white wine, I call it Sweet Heat. It's I stopped fermentation. Well, it's about a 1.010, and it's still got some sweetness to it, and it's a white wine, and and it's really good, and it's high proof too. It's like 16%, 32 proof. You ever had 32 proof wine? It's about as much as those flavored shines were at the part of the bottle. Yeah. All right, sprayer attachment. Well, that's probably for sparging. That sounds like you got one of these. Does it have the heating element built into the bottom of it? That sounds like a spraying wand for sparging or something. That's more into the beer. But we can definitely get you into, first of all, what kind of steel do you have, Northern Girl? Yeah, wine well, making good wine isn't real easy, but once you get used to it, it's not difficult. I mean, distilling is probably the easiest part of it and takes the least time. It's with making wine, it's hurry up and wait. But yeah, actually, I've made quite a bit of Welch's wine, and it makes good wine. People laugh, and a lot of these wine snobs would scoff at you and look down their noses as they laugh. But I love Welch's wine. I've made some really good Welch's wine. Actually, I use because grapes are so damn expensive, and I don't know any, places that are wineries will give me a bunch of their leftovers or anything like that, or a lot of times these wineries, it's really strange about wine and grapes is they don't want big, huge, juicy grapes. They want to stress the plant. They go in, they cut off. This is making too many, so they cut some off and stress it. And they do a lot of these things, and they don't want their soil to be ultra rich and stuff. It's totally antithetical to everything that you ever learned about farming and grazing. And they do that to stress these plants because when they're stressed, they put out some of their most interesting flavors into the grapes, and they're smaller. It's a wine grape is nothing like a table grape. And so, but when I buy grapes and they're table grapes, uh, I supplement it with the Welch's, but make sure you get the 100% without the preservatives and stuff in it, because you get some that's got the potassium metabisulfate in there. It'll tend to kill your yeast off, and you have to keep adding yeast. And when you do that, you overload it with yeast, and you start getting yeast flavors, and that's not good either. So, um, yeah, it's hard. Yeah. Oh yeah. Let me put that back up there. Is it that small? I mean, I can barely read it. I can read enough to know that I'm behind. That's what I like. Yeah, I need a bigger TV. I need a bigger monitor. It's 32, man. I mean, I'm like a foot and a half, maybe. I'm arm's length away from it, a couple of feet, and yeah, I can barely read it. Yeah, I'm telling you, man, these old eyes. Yeah, I use cheesecloth. Yeah, or you can use a brew bag. You can. I ferment on. Well, I do my primary fermentation with fruit. I use pectic enzymes. Like with my grapes. And then after day two with the pectic enzymes, uh, a lot of this is already eaten up all the pulp and stuff in the grape, and all you can see floating around are skins. Get those skins off. That you want those skins out of there. And white grapes. Now, if you're doing a dark grape or a dark wine, or you want to leave those skins in because that gives you some color. But like in your white wine, if you want it to be sweet, get those skins out of there because they're pretty bitter. So you strain those skins off after the second day, and then you start fermentation, right? So day 1 and 2 is just with pectic enzymes using to, eat up all that uh, grape pulp in the grape in the middle of it. And those skins, you'll just be floating around. You can skim those off because those are pretty bitter. But yeah, I don't even use a brew bag. I've got a big strainer that sits right on my bucket, and it's about that big around, screen type strainer, and it's got two little hooks on the front corner, and then a little, I guess, a hook on the back to hang it, and that sits perfectly on top of my bucket, so I can just pour stuff right through that strainer as I go, and it's fallen in a couple of times when I bumped it. There's always a few curse words being said. You just have to dump it back and do it again. But um, it does a really good job. I would like to have one just sit the full screen, just sit perfectly in the top of the bucket. And I've been every time I use it, I think one of these days I'm gonna make one like this that'll fit the whole bucket. But that day hasn't come yet. It may never. It's one of these days things. But yeah, just to get the skins out of there, or seeds. It takes your seeds out too. But yeah, you can steep. You can use the bag the whole time. That the yeast go right through it. They don't mind, and so they can get at it and get at the sugar, and it doesn't hurt anything to use a brew bag. I just prefer to. A lot of people won't use pectic enzymes. They don't like using the pectic enzymes. They don't like. They say it imparts a certain flavor they don't like, and I can understand that because it is eating, some of the cellulose up and some of the skins and stuff up. And in certain fruits, you don't need it, and in others you do, like your berries, unless it's a strawberry. But like, excuse me, blackberries, raspberries, those you don't really need it because all you got to do is muddle those berries up, bust them up, and break that outside, coating, and break the skins on it, and then you'll be fine. That's a good idea there. Now if you got an agitator, that's nice. Me, I've got a drill with a mud mixer. That's mine. But yeah, in reverse every 3 hours on molasses runs keeps it propped up for better efficiency. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I wish I had an agitator on my still. Do you ever distill on the grain with that agitator, Matthew? That's going to be my next thing. Next time I do corn, I'm going to distill on the grain. I've got a false bottom, and I'm going to, put it. I'm going to sparge all the fine stuff off, of course, and just distill with the larger pieces of grain. Is a 40-gallon steel too big to start off with? How much should a run yield? 40-gallon, let's see, you're going to get probably maybe 6 to 8 gallons. Depending, it really depends on the ABV of the mash. So, if you're running a 1050 mash, you're not going to get as much as if you have a 1080, as far as gravity wise. So it really depends on the gravity, and the yield also depends on the steel. So if you're producing it at 180, you're going to get half as much alcohol come off the steel as if you're using a pot that's running 90. Well, I've never really seen one run that low, but hypothetically speaking, if you get one that's putting out 180, you're going to get half the product with the same mash as if you have one putting out at 90. So yield, it's subjective. You're talking about yield total, yield after proofing down. After you proof down that 180 to 90, and you got a steel coming out at 190, it should be about the same, right? So there's a lot of variables that will affect that. But generally speaking, coming off at a 130, 140, which is average, and a decent proof to come off that, depending on what you're doing. Sometimes you want a higher proof, if you're running vodkas and gins and stuff like that, you're going to generally come off at a higher proof than what you would with a brandy or a whiskey. So, so yield, is variable to a lot of things, to the mash, to the type of steel you got, and really, you want to kind of target your proof to the distillate and the steel and the setup to the distillate that you want to actually make. But 40 gallons is a bit large for a beginner. I will say that I'm not going to say I wouldn't do it, because it will save you money in the long run. You go out and buy 10 gallon steel, and you'll end up loving the hobby, and you'll be like, damn, I wish I bought a bigger steel. And next thing you know, you'll have a 20, and next thing you know, it's not enough either, man. And next thing you know, you'll have a 30 or a 40. So, maybe starting out with a 40 is going to save you money, but it's going to be really tough to learn on. I would maybe, I think 20 to 30, 15, like a keg, or 18 and a half, like some of these football bevers. If you don't know what I'm talking about, let me show you a picture. It's probably a good place for somebody to start out with. If you have money, you can increase it. I noticed, like this. I noticed an outfit today, the day advertising. They've got these out here for like $399, 20 gallons. Crazy. It's $399, and it's like a 20-gallon. That's not a bad deal. Now it doesn't include the column and all that, but it's just the milk pot at the bottom. But not a bad deal. But the football steel, yeah, that's what I was going to show you. Let me show you these are about 200, 230-ish, somewhere in that range. Tell me, okay. And they look like this. And that comes in an 18 and a half gallon. Now, you heard me talking earlier. I use one of these. They're great little, don't let anybody knock you. You can do advanced distilling in this right here if you don't want to go big, right? Or if you've got a 40, and after you come off and everything, and you want to make a second run, of course, you're going to be dealing with what I said, 8 gallons maybe. So, 6 to 8 gallons is, you can't run 6 to 8 gallons on a 40, So you'll have to have something smaller for, small second runs. So you'll take that 6, gallons and put it on, 6 gallons of either water or another mash or something to flavor it, back set or whatever, to maintain some flavor. And so you'll have 12, 15 gallons, which is perfect to run in this 18 and a half. You'll run about 15, and it'll be about right there in the pot. Well, you can't see my mouse, can you? So it'll be about, 4/5 of the way up, and gives you plenty of room for foaming so you don't puke over. But these make a good little starter steel, and it's got a ferrule on the top, and they're cheap. So I would say, start with one of these and get your feet wet and learn. And then when you move up to the 40, you can use this pot for a thumper, or, something like that, and modify it to use it for a thumper, which is what a lot of people do when they start moving up. They start using their smaller steels that they don't use anymore as thumpers, and use it to boil water or whatever they can. But another big advantage of having that 40-gallon steel, and I was talking to a friend about this the other day who's talking about scaling up. He bought a small 5-gallon steel, and he's like, "Man, this is just crazy. It's a lot of work." I'm like, "Yeah, you put as much work into a 5 as you put into a 50. Really, if you're grinding up corn, if you grind 10 pounds, it takes X amount of time. But while you got the grinder out, you got the corn out, you got everything else, it doesn't take that much longer to go ahead and grind the whole bag or a couple of bags. You're looking at, a little bit more time, but not that much in the whole scheme of things. And then, you're boiling water, and infuse and steeping or cooking your corn. So it doesn't take that much longer because you've already got the turkey fryer out and the big pot out to boil the water. You've already got everything set up. You're just putting more water in and boiling more water. So, and it does take a long time to heat the water up. But in the whole scheme of things, making, a 40-gallon thing full of mash, or a 10-gallon or 5-gallon bucket full of mash, really doesn't take, it doesn't take 10 times longer to make a 50-gallon mash as it does a 5. It's just taking maybe 10% longer. So, and it doesn't go bad. If you keep it properly, it won't go bad. So you can keep going back to it and dip 5 gallons out each time if you have 5-gallon steel until you get all the way through it. And the same with the brandy. If you just keep pouring that wine in there and then airlock it, and it'll be fine. And next time you need some more, pop the cork, pour it in, airlock it, and it'll be good the next time. I mean, Tom, hell, he's talking about he forgot about a barrel he had in his barn out there. He said he forgot all about it sitting over there, and it must have gone a year, in grain. And he said he went over and looked, it was fine, and he ran it, some of the best it ever made. So, it'll keep, as long as it doesn't have, bacteria and stuff in it that ruin it. But yeah, so, it's hard to say, but I would start out with an 18.5 like this. I think it's a nice little steel. It's easy to clean. It's easy to maintain. And once you get your feet wet, you can upgrade, and use this as a thumper. After you crash it, how long do you let it sit before you try it? Okay, good question. Now, are you talking about the wine, or what are we talking about crashing it? Crashing is a lot of times something people do with wine to fortify it or to separate it. It forces the particulates to settle out faster, and that's what generally people crashed for in the past. Cold crashing would be to help separate things, because once it gets cold, the yeast become, dormant, and they operate less and less until there's nothing, and then everything settles down because you don't have a lot of CO2 being produced, right? So and I'm sorry, I'm getting way behind. I'm gonna have to speed up, but crashing it is generally been used for that. Now, that's not to be confused with, what we call the method where you freeze distillation. Apple jacking. Jacking is the word I was looking for. Man, my mind. But not to be confused with jacking. But yeah, winemakers generally can cool it down. You can cool it down to like 45, and it'll deactivate the yeast and let everything settle, and you can rack it off. I just let mine go. I do my primary fermentation, and when it's done, it's getting towards the dry. I'll throw in a little potassium sorbate. I'll put it in a secondary fermenter and just let it age in there, and let it slowly go, and let it sit and get it off all that, rack it off from all that. You can use a brew bag, to help separate it if you want to get that last little bit out of there, and be efficient, and then let it settle out again, and then do a third racking. That's not a big problem. But yeah. 1 quart per gallon of mash. Yeah, that's about right. 20%, usually about 20. Once you count the heads and the tails and stuff, generally about 20% ish if you have a decent. Again, it really depends on the gravity of your mash. But yeah, I'd say about 20, maybe 25 if you got a good. If it was a 1080 or 90 type mash, you could probably get that, or if it's something that you don't get a lot of heads from, like a tequila or a sugar wash or something, heavily sugared like that, you get less heads and methanol production. So yeah. Usually with the wine, you just want to let it run its natural course. But some people do the some people do the cold crashing just to deactivate and help separate, because it does help separate. But the thing about wine is you don't want to rush anything, and you don't, just keep the yeast happy, keep them at their happy temperature, keep their nutrients proper. Don't give them too much, don't give them too little. It just, the happier you keep your yeast, the better your wine's going to be. And then the same with your distillates as well. Well, you've come to the right place, brother. We can walk you through. Join the Moonshine Militia and the DIY Shine and stuff on Facebook. Both of those groups, we've got some. I just posted, I guess last week or a couple of weeks ago, a simple how-to on doing like just a simple grain. You know, and it adds all the stuff that you need to get prepare for it. But first thing you're going to get, you're going to need with a 40-gallon is you're going to need probably, a couple of 40-gallon fermenters, or 30-gallon, at least, so you can ferment enough um, to fill your still up, you know. And you're gonna need a big pot, that 40-gallon pot. I never did get my thought finished. It's a good thing if you have that 40-gallon, because you can boil 40 gallons of water in it to use for cooking or steeping your shine. So I wouldn't use it to cook in, because you don't want to scorch that copper pot for sure. You don't want to get you definitely don't want to scorch the bottom of that copper pot with corn. So I would definitely use the steeping method. Don't cook in that pot. But yeah, you can boil your water in it and have 40 gallons of boiling water, which is awesome. Mine's 30, and I can only do it like 25 in it, because I don't want to get it too close to the top, and I just dip it out. It's heavy, that 40 gallons of water is heavy, about 280 pounds. So yeah, you can just boil your water in it and dip it out as you steep your corn, and we'll talk about steeping and all that. So yeah, I mean it's good for just a damn boiler, but that's an awful nice pot, man. That's awesome, awesome birthday present. Who gave you that for your birthday? I need to meet these people. What's going on, Mike? Peace out, brother. Good to see you. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we call that secondary, racking to secondary fermentation. But it depends on the fruit that you're doing, Q. I mean, grapes, the longer the better. But with some fruit, longer isn't better. Some fruit mature in about a year, 8 months, 6 months, 8 months, a year. And after about year 2 or 3, they start degrading in quality. So you want to drink that wine, strawberries and some others, they just don't age real well over long, long periods of time like grapes do. So some of your fruits, you need to, after 6 months, 8 months, when you taste it, tastes pretty good. It's got a lot of character and flavors, and it's just time. Bottle it up, rack it, do that final rack, and bottle it up, and you're ready to go. But add the potassium sorbate to it before you do. That way, you don't get corks popping and have a real messy wine room. You don't want that to happen either. So you want to make sure that all that wine, basically what potassium sorbate does is it neuters the yeast. They can't reproduce. So they go ahead and live out about their lives eating and producing as much as they can. And then once they die and they don't reproduce. So, and but some people don't like the flavor of that in wines as much. And the Potassium metabisulfate will just kill yeast. So some people use that instead. Well, you don't have to connect with him now. You can just come on, connect with us, and ask all the questions. We can, I mean, we'll pull up videos and show, and you can go to philbillymoonshine.com. He on YouTube. You're on YouTube. Check out Philbilly Moonshine. He's got lots of videos. He's done everything from corn to Fruit Loops. So if he's done a lot of different things, and it shows him making the mashes and stuff. But we can talk you into it and talk you through each step and what you need to do. I mean, you're this far, pretty much most of it. All you gotta do is pour your wine in there and heat it up and distill it. It's really pretty easy. It's like hard boiling eggs. Yeah, yeah. Go big or go home. Yeah, now degassing, yeah. So the mud mixer I was talking about earlier that I used to help stir, that also is great for degassing. A lot of wines have to be degassed. There's a lot of carbonation in them. My white wines is there. Some of them I just leave that way, and it makes a decent, like a champagne or a sparkling wine. So if you don't degas it, you end up with what's called a sparkling wine, and those are cork poppers too. So you want to degas that stuff and just stir the shit out of it. I mean, you take that drill, turn it on high, and that mud mixer, man, it creates a big vortex in there in the bucket, and you just keep going, and then when you stop, it'll shh. Actually, I've got a video of me doing that. I'll find that. I think it's on my phone. I'll have to transfer it to that, but I'll do that in here in a little bit. Y'all can see it. I mean, it foams up a lot. Yeah, on Moonshiners, they made like a canopy. I think they called it a canopy. So they've got that mentality, and it makes for good entertainment. It is funny. So, and I've done the same thing. Not that, but with the mentality, if a little's good, a whole lot's better. That's that's not the way it works at all. Let me see here. I have to go back in my gallery. Oh no. Not now. I do not want albums. When did they change all this shit? I don't want albums. I just want pictures, man. Well, maybe that's good. It broke down videos. Oh no, it just shows me one. God, this sucks. Well, they did this, man. They ruined it. And then it's showing Facebook shit on here. I just want my fucking phones. That's horrible if they did this. Let's see how far I got to go back. This is like last year. I haven't made the sweet heat in a while. My fiance that loves it has diabetes, so she can no longer drink it. So I don't make it anymore. So it's been about a year or two since I made it. So I'm gonna have to go back in my gallery a little ways here. But I hate that it's combined Facebook and everything. I don't like that cross information. I don't like it shared like that across. Don't like it at all. Let's see, is that it? No, it's corn mash. I got so much on here, man. Let's see. No, that's the banana. That's nasty looking stuff too. It's damn good. So y'all talk. I don't know where. Is this it? No. Hang on. Now, that's just me busting up a bunch of white grapes though with my mud mixer. That thing comes in handy. It helps churn up a lot of stuff. With grapes though, you don't want to like put them in a blender. You just want to bust them open and get to the insides. You don't want to blend the skins up because it makes them harder to separate out later when you need to. Dang on it. Got so many pictures on here. That's peach. Well, maybe it was longer than I thought ago. Lord have mercy. But it is a cool video. A lot of people liked it because you could hear the shh, all that CO2. And I will say the small bubbles are CO2, and I couldn't even find it, so I'm at the end here. The small bubbles are CO2, and the large bubbles are oxygen. Yeah, I'm not able to find it. I'll show it maybe this Saturday. Yeah, I'll try to have it the 25th on Saturday. Yeah, this Saturday I'll find that video and share it. It's pretty cool. But yeah, Black Pearl's right good. Man, I am that far behind. Yeah, Black Pearl is I think what they're getting up there in Ohio. Philbilly's getting it, West getting up there, and that's good stuff. That is real good stuff. That's you can use that for baking and food grade stuff. The stuff that you get out of the feed store. Unlike the corn, a lot of people think, oh, that's animal feed corn, and yellow dent number 2 is the same thing you use to make your cornbread and cornmeal with that you buy in the store. So, I mean, some of them use a white corn, but generally speaking, yellow dent number 2 is yellow dent number 2. There's different grades and qualities. You know, some had a lot of insects in it, and their cobs didn't turn out well, and that usually ends up being deer corn or feed corn, but it's all the same corn pretty much. What's going on, brother? Yeah, box wine brandy works. It works well. Yep, that's all it is. That's distilled wine is a brandy. It's that literally that simple. You take your fine wine and you pour it in that. Yeah, for me personally, a lot of it is if I make a really good wine, it goes in the fucking bottle. It goes to the bottle. I'm not putting in the distiller for the simple reason you lose a lot of flavor when you distill. And that's why I'm telling people that try brandy for the first time, don't expect mixed drink flavor. Knock you down flavor because it's just not there. It's a very light, delicate flavor of a peach or an apple, whatever that you're whatever fruit you're using, and it's just not really strong tasting. So if you want something really strong tasting, then post flavor because it's just not going to be that. But it's a good distillate. It has good flavor. You can taste the peach and you can pick up some other notes and some sweetness. And and if you've ever had just plain old white dog, it's much more pleasant than just plain white dog. It's got some sweeter notes, it's got some fruity notes, and it's just to somebody that has a pretty good palate and flavor, tasting abilities and good taste buds, I guess. It's just a little more pleasurable than just plain white dog. Now, I will say, I like good corn liquor too. I've tasted some corn liquor that was distilled on the grain and had a lot of corn flavor, corn sweetness in it. I've tasted a lot and made a lot that's used cream corn in your infusers. I've got an inline infuser right now, but I'm gonna make some infusion jars because the inline is just not. It doesn't hold enough. I want more. I want more of that flavor carry forward. So I'm gonna go 3. But yeah, pineapple wine's awesome. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the sweet heat I made, oh man, it was so good. White wine, and it's just some of the best flavor and very strong. I mean, it's like drinking a mixed drink, literally, and you don't realize it. And man, that shit'll get you hammered quick, but it also has a hangover. There are the hangovers to deal with where you don't really get that with moonshine if you make proper cuts. So, well, good, Scott. How you doing, brother? Good to see you. Grappa, that's right. And I'm known for my grappa. Some people say it's the best thing. I guess Phil Billy and Ian or Big Easy and a bunch of them. I took. I guess it was been a few years ago at Maggie Valley when I took my grappa in. They let everybody try it. Man, everybody's just going, "Wow, that's some of the best shit I've ever drank in my life." You know, and Big Easy, he's drank about everything. He's like, "This is the best thing I've ever drank in my life." And they love it. It's about 130 proof, and I couldn't proof it down anymore without it clouding up. It has I did it a special way. I used a deflegmator and I compressed a lot of oils and stuff and made it retain them. Of course, I with the white wine it went about a year and over a year and in the bottle, right, or in the fermenter. Um, and then it went from that into distilling it, and then it sat in a jar and matured. After you distill it, it still matures in a jar. You don't have to mature it in a in a wood cask. You know, it in a barrel. It'll mature on its own in a jar as well. There's a lot of chemical processes going on, esterifications, a lot of the acids and oils mixing, and I allowed that to happen. So it was about a 2 year. It took about almost 2 years to make that, and it's pretty good. All right. Well, hope we don't lose you. If you do, you know where to find us. I got him right here, brother. Well, look like Santa Claus for sure now. But yeah, I put them like this when I have to read. But I usually when I'm like looking at the screen, I get me old, you know, get the old eyeball on it. I'm done with watermelon. I just soon eat it and enjoy it with a little salt on it. Uh, I wasn't that impressed with it, to be honest with you, Josephus. I tell you, there's just too many other fruits out there, and watermelon ain't cheap. You know, they're like the ones I got were $2.99 each, and that's cheap, unless you know a farmer or you live out in the country near one. You know, so it wasn't a cheap mash. You know, it wasn't cheaper than peaches or anything else that turns out much better. Um, I just don't think I'll ever fool with it again. I mean, that seeded watermelon, that shit stunk. It was the worst wine. I didn't even put it in. I didn't even distill it. It was that bad. I wasn't going to fool around with putting it on the column. It was only like 5-6 gallons of mash, about 7 gallons of mash. But I'm like, nah, I just dumped it. Took it out in the woods, dumped it. No, never. Wouldn't even bother with it. But both of the seedless ones, the one that was okay-ish and the one that was actually made an okay wine. I mean, it was okay, meaning it wasn't as bad as the one I done, but it still wasn't something that I would want to bottle and wine and drink. It just none of it, none of it was all that good. So I probably won't. And I mean, I didn't do it wrong. I took out all the pulp. I did it right, and it's just not my cup of tea. I mean, some people may like it. Some people may have some little secrets and tips and special watermelons that they use and stuff. But for me, it just wasn't there. Um, yeah, clear's good, but it's okay to drink mix. I grew up on the same thing. It's got to be clear, clear, clear. Tunnel vision, clear. But as I've gotten older, I realize that most of the people they don't like white dog. They like flavors and they want some sweetness and they want some flavor that goes with it. So a lot of times the easiest way to get that is just to mix it with something. And like I said, Farm to Bottle this year, a lot of sweet stuff out there, but they really didn't have it proofed up enough for me. That 30, 40 proof stuff. I need 80 proof with that same kind of flavor. Then you got some. What's going on, Shadow? You see, brother? Yeah, yeah. You can freeze them and get some, opening up the cell walls and break them out. The inside freezes and expands and breaks it, and that works pretty well. I'd say you probably get a good percentage of them busted open that way without using the pectic enzymes. And on a lot of fruits, that may be all you need. Like for a lot of your berries and stuff, that and bottling is all you need. But when I deal with like peaches and stuff that's real pulpy, bananas, stuff with a lot of pulp and a lot of slime to deal with. There's nothing like, having that pectic enzyme to just liquefy all that stuff. I mean, I've literally taken peaches and it's just a thick slurry of goo. It's slimy as hell. And put that pectic enzyme in there and stir it up good. And in 2 days, man, it's just liquid. There's hardly any of that stuff left, and it just makes it easier to manage and work with. And I haven't really, I can't tell a bad flavor that it gives. But yeah, all the meaty fruits, I like using pectic enzymes to help break them down. But for stuff like watermelon, no, it's best just to get that pulp off. You don't even want to deal with that. Pears did good. That's awesome, brother. It didn't carry over no flavor carried over. But I mean, I'm glad that you got it. What was your gravity? Vega whiskey. Yeah, the Vendomes are nice, man. Hell yeah. Yeah, I mean there's bread, a lot of bread liquor out there. It's an old thing. Actually, one of the oldest distilling methods is actually taking stale bread and old bread and fermenting it naturally and making a beer out of it. Sure is. That goes way back thousands of years, over 1,000 years. Sure does. Pretty interesting stuff. Hey, if y'all haven't ever listened to Alan Bishop, he's got some videos on YouTube, and he's got a channel on YouTube and Facebook and stuff. And he delves into a lot of the history and stuff, Matthew. I think you'd like to listen to a lot of his stuff. He knows a lot about the history, and he delves into a lot of the history on it and goes into a lot of the what they did in the past and stuff. I love listening to some of that stuff. He's a great guy too. So if y'all want to listen to some of the, he's very knowledgeable about a lot of the, you know, distillates from the past and absinthes and a lot of different things. Very interesting guy, very knowledgeable. Awesome. Nothing like it's like kids on Christmas waiting, isn't it? I know the feeling, man. That's a good question, Brian. I've used gas for most of my. Actually, I started out with fire and then went to gas, and now I do gas and stovetop. Now I'll explain the stovetop. Not all stovetops work, so you have to get a specific type. And the type you have to get is one that stays on. When you turn it on high, it doesn't turn off. It puts it out a certain output, and that's it. It doesn't cut on and off, because anything that regulates with a thermostat, don't use it. Any stove that kicks on and off thermostatically, don't use it. But this one, and I guess it's older. It's probably a 15-year-old Frigidaire, maybe 15 to 20 years old, and it stays lit the whole time. It's the infrared type. It's not the coil on the top, and it's not induction. It's the infrared. So it has that red glow when it's on. So I get to 8 or 9 on mine, and that's medium high to high. and that red stays on constantly, and it's got a 5 burner on it, and that 18.5 covers about 3 burners. So I use the front, which is a 3200 watt, the back, which I think is 19 to 22, somewhere in there, and then this little one in the middle is a warmer. I crank them all on full blast until I get a drip, then I'll adjust it down. But do not use a stove that cycles, because it will affect your cuts. You'll get blending and smearing throughout the run. But if it has a constant on, then you're good. This is an old Frigidaire. I'll pull up a model if people are interested. It's old as hell. It was in the house when I moved here, and it looked old when I got here, and I've been here 13 years. So it has to be at least 18, 20 years. Yeah, 8 gallon and 13. I would get the 13 or the 18. I wouldn't fool with anything less than 10 for sure. I mean, if you've got a 5, that's fine, but you're probably already thinking about upgrading after you run it a few times. They're fine for, second runs. If you have a, 18 or 20, or using a keg. Kegs make good steels. Kegs are very heavy duty. They're a lot heavier duty than these Fevers, and they have that same, you know, ferrule on the top. That 2-inch ferrule, it requires a special gasket that's grooved on one side, flat on the other. Fieldley's got those, and you have to use them. You can get a regular gasket, but you can trim that ridge off, because if you've seen it, there's ridges on both sides to help trap and shut things off. So, but yeah, keg steels are nice. They work great. If you can get a cutout and a larger ferrule put on there, so where you can get down in there and scrub and clean them out. I used keg steel for many, many, many years. And my biggest qualm about it was having to take it. I didn't have a pressure washer. I was too poor. I didn't have a pressure washer at the time. And I'd have to take it to the quarter wash to spray it out inside after, 10 runs or so. It'd start building up shit. And then, I'd have to take it in and spray it out and clean it out. And other than that, they work great. Right. I'm not sure what valves I must have missed a conversation there. But yeah, on your 40 gallon, make sure, especially copper steel, make sure that every time you run, when you get finished with the run, you need to move the cap or open it up. Now, I would install a ball valve at the top of that steel on the cape, and as soon as you get done running, open that up. I don't care if it kicks out a little steam. Don't worry about it unless you're inside, and have an open flame. That's not a good idea. But outside, open that valve up, and even then, let it cool for a minute, and then open it up, because what happens is you get a vapor lock, and it can implode that steel. I've seen it happen many, many times. I know people it's happened too, and they were nice big copper steels too. So especially if you're running the Thunder, keys right, because it cannot breathe backwards and cool. It airlocks and it starts to cool, and it has nowhere to go, so it just sucks in. And yeah, what's going on, Greg? Good to see you, brother. Mr. Illuminati triangle there. I see that. My best brandy was that grappa for sure. It was definitely hands down the grappa. I make decent peach if I don't use the Olive Nation with Monin or Tarani. It works out pretty well, but the Olive Nation doesn't carry over very well for me. All right, brother. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you Saturday, my friend. Bever is great. They're fine. They make a fine little steel, especially the football ones. Now the 3-pot steels, they're okay, but they can be made to be good, and you have to do some modifications. If you got the 3-pot steel, your condenser's grossly undersized. Period. The end. It's too hard to maintain a temperature. It's too small, and it sits right on top of the steel. And I know I'm behind. I'm trying to catch up, and it sits on top of the steel, and it just stays hot. It's so hard to keep cool, and you want to keep your your water, this coolant water, condensation water, condensing water, I guess you could say. You want to keep that at around 65 to 75 degrees. Anywhere in there is the perfect zone. It doesn't matter if it gets a little lower or higher. The world doesn't end, but it can affect things slightly, especially if it gets extremely, different than those. So if you're like 40 degrees, it's going to have an impact. If you're 120 degrees, it's going to have an impact. But try to keep it around 70. Closer as you can keep that, the better. But what you need to do is get that pot off the top. If your thumper's sitting on top, that's fine. That doesn't matter at all. And in fact, it's probably good for it to sit on top because you need that thumper warm when stuff starts going into it. That way it doesn't build up so much before it starts heating to the point where it can read a steel, right? So it's okay if it sits on top because that helps preheat things. But you want to get that condenser away from the steel, and you want it to be in a larger coil in a 5 gallon bucket or something like that. It's got to be a much larger bucket. And the larger the flake is, that's the technical term for it, is the flake stand or the bucket that you have your coil in if you're using a worm. Um, the larger it is, the easier it is to keep that temperature regulated in there, right? So definitely upgrade the condenser and get it away from the steel, and they do just fine. I mean, it's a stainless steel boiler that kicks off steam. That's all the hell you need, right? I mean, the football one I like because it's got that ferrule on top and it's got a sloped lid to give you vapor velocity and direction, and it's a large opening, and you can get more steam pumping through there faster and get through your run quicker. Now, I was talking last week about time wise, and people say, "Oh, I bet with them 50 gallon, them 100 gallon steels, it takes all day." And then, no, I talked to a dude who runs a 500 gallon steel, and it takes him 6 hours to get through his, just like it takes me to get through my 15 and my 18 and a half. So if you properly increase the size of your plumbing to match your steel, it doesn't take any longer to run a big steel than it does a small one. In fact, it's about the same. Some maybe a little longer, but that small pipe coming off those, like if you got an 18.5 gallon beaver like mine and you got a 1/2 inch line, you're building up a lot of pressure inside. You're building up a lot of pressure inside that boiler. And with increased pressure, you increase the temperature. And when you increase the temperature to a certain point, you're sending over a lot of water, and it's going to lower your proof. You're going to get some puking, most likely, a lot of foaming up if you don't space it properly and give it enough of a gap, air gap. So, I mean, you can't even boil water without it foaming up, much less, a beer. So, yeah, it's pretty interesting. But yeah, just make a bucket condenser, and that's all you need. But it's a stainless boiler. A stainless boiler is a stainless boiler. You put it in, it's stainless. It's easy to clean. It boils it. It comes out. What more can you ask for? It's the thing about the kegs though is sitting in the corner. It looks like a keg, and it doesn't look like a steel pot or something. With a but and they're a lot heavier duty. You can throw it in the back of the truck, roll and go, and you don't care if you get a little dinger here. Not a big deal. They're $35 on marketplace most places. And making different types of brandy for over 10 years, awesome. I've been given a large amount of pumpkin. I'm thinking about making pumpkin spice. Any recommendations? My recommendation would be go watch FearBillyMoonshine.com. He's got one on there. He does a pumpkin, and I think he's got all pumpkin spice. I think he gets the pumpkin spice mix and does pumpkins, and a lot of people like it. I can't say that I've ever tasted a pumpkin shine or a pumpkin pie. They make pumpkin pie, I guess, is the the target, like an apple pie. But they say they're pretty good, but I've never done them and I've never tried them. But I'd say Phil, but definitely he's done it. He's done everything there is under the sun to distill, and he can give you some pointers. I have heard somebody talking recently about doing it. Let's see. I think we did some research last week. Let me share this. Just sharing these out. and that way I can open that up. All right, let's see here now. Let me. Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of sugar in a pumpkin, but there are starches. I'm trying to get it's not on my regular charts. So they do have, it's a starchy vegetable, 12 grams of total carbs per cup. So that's decent. Let's see where that falls on my chart here. Let's see. Let me pull this chart up for us here and see what we got here. Here we go. I don't think it has pumpkins on here. Let me take your comment on. Let me take this off too so I can see. Yeah, I don't see pumpkin on the list, but I think it said how many grams? 2 point. Let's see. A cup of cooked pumpkins, 12 grams. Carbs are 12 grams. 2.7 fiber. 5 grams of natural sugar per cup. 5 grams per cup. So, yeah, I'd say it's going to be, probably better than a fig. Maybe around like something like a honeydew, maybe a little less than a honeydew. So, yeah, I'd say it'd be fine. You can use amylase on it. So, use your alpha, the same way you would corn to help break. Because people think that with amylase that's just for grains or that's just for corn. No, it's for rice, it's for potatoes, it's for any starch that you want to break down. So these are just long, complex chains like a pearl necklace. Just imagine a pearl necklace with each pearl being a glucose molecule, right? And the bonded together with the pearl string, that's a glycosidic bond. So all these glucoses are bonded together, and yeast can't eat them when they're bonded together like that. It's just too big. They can't bite it off because that glycosidic bond is a pretty strong bond. So they just can't bite it off and they can't eat it. So it doesn't matter what it is that starches are complex carbs, right? So you can break these up by using the amylase. Now the alpha amylase is an endoenzyme. From the center, it'll start breaking it up in the middle, but it doesn't chop them up into just disaccharides or monosaccharides. There's a lot of oligosaccharides, which are 9 to 13 strings together, right? And they're still bonded together and you still can't eat them. And then you follow up with a gluco or a beta glucanase or a glucoamylase. And when it cools off, and that'll help debranch those smaller ones that the alpha chopped off, right? So it makes it disaccharides and monosaccharides, which is something that your yeast can consume. So even with something like a pumpkin, yeah, go ahead and use your alpha amylase, a high temp, same as you would corn, 185 degrees, cook it, 185, 95 degrees, cook it, add the amylase and maintain that temperature for, an hour and a half at least, and it'll gelatinize that starch just like it does in corn and everything else. And then go ahead and let it cool, and then add your glucoamylase when it gets around 100 degrees, around close to around your yeast pinching times, and you'll maximize the sugars out of that pumpkin. And that'll probably have a better flavor trying to, get some of those natural sugars as opposed to just, sugaring it up. Then once everything cools, you put your hydrometer in there and measure and see how much. Now you've got to make sure that you separate the liquids, right? You don't want to drop your hydrometer into a slimy mess of goo and stuff with solids. So you want to, kind of strain off just the liquids, right? That kind of sit for a while and get that liquid off the top. Or I use a strainer and a little cup and just cup, through the strainer, and I can get liquids that way. Either way, however you do it, but make sure when you use a hydrometer just to test liquid only, because those solids can affect the reading. But anyway, check your reading. It's probably going to be a 103 or something like that, but at least you've used some of the sugars out of that plant, right? Out of that vegetable. So then you can, or fruit, a pumpkin, a fruit, I don't know, is that a fruit of the vine or something? Anyway, then, after you use your glucose, let it sit, I let it sit overnight. And then the next day, check it. And then you can make your simple syrup, or you can just heat up, a few gallons of water and start adding pounds of sugar and just keep you a syrupy, solution made of water and sugar. And that way you can just add it, stir it in, check your gravity. Oh, stir it up, add some more, check your gravity. No, add some more, stir it up until you get a 1070, 1080, whatever you're happy with. And then you're ready to ferment and start adding, probably throw in a little bit of nutrients. I don't know how much free amino nitrogens in that, and yeast assimilable nitrogens in that your fan and yan I talk about that your yeast really need. I'd say there's not a lot, even in a pumpkin. Um, so add a little bit of nutrients. You can, if you don't have nutrients, you can boil up some bread yeast, some cheap yeast or something, and boil it up, kill it, and add it, and that'll make a nutrients. Or you can crush up some bran flakes and add it. There's a lot of ways you can use it. I just use the diammonium phosphate, Fermax. I use Fermax that you can get cheap. It's cheap stuff, and it lasts you a long time. Just get it, use it. It's easy, but don't overdose. Don't put too much nutrients in there. A lot of people don't take that. A little's good is a lot better, because you get too much nutrients. It definitely will impart on your flavor. Not enough, or no nutrients will impart on your flavor too, because you stress the yeast. So definitely give it a try. Sounds interesting. A lot of people do it and say it's good. I've had some people already talking about this issue that have done it and like it. I don't know, watermelon or pumpkin wine. I don't know, but maybe a pumpkin brandy might be better. All right, I haven't done it yet. I figured somebody call me out on it. I did the corn, and I think I mentioned something in there about this is the steeping method now. I put it in it's in the DIY Shine and Stuff page, and in the Moonshine Militia. In the files, if you go to the group page in the very top row, you'll see where it says, let me see here. It said discussion featured members, events, media files. Just click on files, and right at the very top, it'll say simple steps for beginners mashing corn using steeping method. And I put that up on the 8th, and I promised to put the other one up, and I've been so busy I haven't. I have most of it done, and it's basically the same as this, and it's gonna be basic, bro. So for you, it's not gonna be a big help, but it's the same steps everybody follows pretty much. It's got some resting periods in it, and you know it's not a step mash per se, or anything like that, but uh, let's see. But I will. I will post it. I don't have a lot to do. A lot of it is copy and paste, but I've got to, of course, when it gets to 135, 45, talk about adding your malts in and talk about diastatics and all that. So it's going to be a little more complex, but it will be in there, brother. I promise. But that one's in there for and it's a beginner thing, but it's a good little guide for beginners and intermediates, that just wanting to steep and try the steeping method. But definitely, I will get that multigrain done, and I don't know if it'll be by Saturday. I've got so many things to do. It's like so much to do. I have a 3-grain mash. It's been working for about 3 weeks and it's not finished. SG was 1085, now 101010. I also have a 2-grain that is finished. Can I mix them to do a sacrifice run? Ooh. Um, I would not, Greg. I wouldn't waste a good mash like that for a sacrificial run. Is something that you don't drink, right? It's something you just run through your steel to clean out with. So if it's a new stainless steel, I would basically clean it good with Dawn. I would run hot boiling water through it to, clean up anything that's water soluble. And then I would take some isopropyl alcohol if you don't have heads. If you're funny about isopropyl, people get funny about it. I don't understand. They say, oh, you're putting that in your body. Yeah, and you put it on a cut that goes into your skin too. It's not like that, but it evaporates off and it doesn't leave poisonous residues behind or anything like that. But you can take that isopropyl and put it on a rug and just clean the shit. I mean, use a lot of elbow grease on the inside of that stainless and clean it and get it good enough to where you can run without having to worry about a sacrificial run. Now, on copper, where there's a lot of soldering, there's a lot of fluxes involved. I would probably add running some vinegar through that. That way, anything acidic that would be, soluble in an acidic liquid, that would break it down. So you've got anything soluble in water broken down, just run boiling water. Anything, with vinegar, anything soluble in acid. But alcohol, again, if you've got something you can run through there, wipe it down real well, I would. Um, but yeah, but I would save those and run it. And I wouldn't. Sacrificial runs it like a cleaning run. Most people do just a sugar wash for that, just sugar and yeast and nutrients, and let it go. It goes quick. Run it through, and you're done. And then you can clean it out, spray it out, and then you're good for about anything you want to do. But definitely, I wouldn't waste a good 3 grain in that. Now, as far as the 1010, that could be simply you didn't convert all your sugars, right? You didn't get all your, if you use powdered amylase, that's fairly common because it doesn't, that powdered alpha doesn't break everything up properly. And so you're going to have usually some unfermentables. A lot of times it's a little bit lower than that, but it'll be fine if you just let it go a little bit longer. If not, it's not the end of the world. You got, uh, you know, 0.075 amount, so that's a decent amount of alcohol anyway. So that's about all most grain people start out with anyway. So you'll be fine with that. But I would definitely run me a sugar shot through there for a sacrificial run to clean with. If Hill Jack's in Kentucky like me, I'm old Kentucky Hill Jack. Can run a steel just use the moon? Yes, sir. And that goes to show you can make this as scientific and hard, as you want to make it, or you can do it as simple as you want to make it. Now, I will say the more of the science you learn and the more of the science that you use, you can get more consistency. But, a lot of people, they don't need a hydrometer when you've run the same recipe over and over and over for 30 years. It'd be silly, drop it in there. Yep, it's the same as last time. Yep, same as last time. I mean, how long are you going to do that? Where it's like, why am I dropping in there? So, but if you do want to make a recipe and create a recipe and try different things, then it comes in very handy. But yeah, you don't need any of that at all, and you can use nothing and just, you know, wing it and make some okay shine, and you can try using the science. And if you're not sure about what you're doing, it's going to be okay. Not that great, but it's a learning process. Got the black pearl. All right. Awesome. I'll make you some runs. So I heard the honey came out real well. That's good to hear. Honey's probably one of the most popular things to run now because it's so good. It's just got a good flavor and it's a really good wash, to run. Extracts to post flavor, yeah, I have, and it works just fine. They do well, and it tastes good. Do I always cook my peaches? No, I do not. But I don't cook them, but I pour 160 plus degree water over top of them, Dolores. And I do that to kill any wild yeast off or any bacteria from bird shit or whatever, that may have gotten on them while they were on the tree and stuff. So I will dump that on it. So I'm technically not cooking them, but I'm pouring that hot water over them to just kill off anything that any wild yeast, because I want to use the yeast I like. I don't want just random wild yeast. I know a lot of people like experimenting with wild yeast. When I make a big batch of peach, I don't want to experiment. If I had a little 5 gallon still and get half a dozen peaches and do a little experimenting with wild yeast, that's all fine and dandy. You don't have a lot of waste and you're not losing a lot of money. Me, I'm just frugal, tight, if you want to call it that. So I don't want anything ruined with wild yeast, right? So that's my whole point. I kill off all the bacteria and all that. So it's technically not cooking. And a lot of times people say cook them, and that's the reason that they're saying that. You could get the same results just getting your water hot, over 160, and then pouring it or adding your fruit to that, or pouring it over the fruit, and that'll help kill off all the some of the bacteria in wild yeast. I almost said all the, but some bacteria wouldn't even 160 wouldn't phase them. What's going on, Roy? Doing good, brother. How you doing? Good to see you, man. You cannot prevent methanol, Jack, but you can minimize it. And you can learn to make proper cuts and cut most of it out. They found that there's methanol throughout the run. Used to think, oh, that first jar I throw off, that takes care of all the methanol. And that was the old timers. That was before we did, grass spectrometry and photo spectrometry and all this stuff. Um, and now we know grass chromatography, all these things, methods for testing. We now know that there's heads throughout and methanol throughout the run. Highest percentage does come off first, but there's traces amounts, and it's a slope that goes down to the very end. Right when you get in the tails, it actually starts to come back up some. So that's interesting that they found, but it's not in the proportions that are going to be harmful, or well, no more harmful than the alcohol is, right, to your body. So alcohol is a toxin in itself. So we're drinking a toxin, and that's what gives us the intoxicating effect. Um, but for the most part, brandies tend to create the most methanol. Brandies made with if you use pectic enzymes that eat these cell walls up, which is basically eating cellulose, converting it to a sugar that can be converted and is, then you're going to get a little bit more methanol and heads in your brandies when you use it. You just have to make better cuts. Just know your cuts when you make it. You can smell it, you can taste it, and acetone and methyl acetates and ethyl acetates and propanols and all that other. You can taste when you go from your heads, to your hearts, and you can smell it. Um, so just making proper cuts and distilling proper distillation techniques will get rid of it. You can fractionally distill, if you want to spend that kind of money on a fractional distillation unit. There's rectifiers that minimize it. There's a lot of different things that you can do, but just making proper cuts. Think about it this way too. When you make wine, the heads and the 4 shots methanol is in that wine. Methanol isn't created when you start heating up wine or heating up beer. It's already in there. So anytime you're drinking wine and beer, you're consuming this. It's just not concentrated. Now, when you distill, you concentrate these things. And that's why you have to make these cuts. But that's one of the reasons too that drinking a lot of wine will give you a hell of a hangover. And apple jacking, I talked about jacking earlier, freeze jacking, freeze distillation. That's the same thing. It will concentrate your methanol into there as well. So it'll give you a hell of a headache. But really, methanol in amounts that's going to cause blindness and deafness, you have to concentrate that and reuse it. Now, I heard years ago, I guess it's been about a year or two ago, a little community in India or somewhere, Bangladesh, India, somewhere, in this town, I guess they had this distiller, and I guess they were distilling this specific fruit for the area. And got greedy. And you know how a lot of people will say the heads and tails and rerun them. And this guy kept rerunning these heads and tails, rerunning these heads and tails, rerunning these heads and tails to the point where it was basically just heads and tails. And he concentrated the methanol to the point that it killed some people. But that you would have to, you know, I guess he's just taking out the hearts and concentrating it to the point where it did that. So it's probably not a good idea to, you know, save a lot of brandy heads and tails for, you know, rerunning. I'd save that for your washes, like your tequila washes, your sugar washes, your rum washes. None of those have a lot of methanol in them at all. Grain a little bit more. So those are things that you can save the hearts and tails and rerun and rerun and rerun. But with your brandies, it's probably not a good idea to exceed once with those, you know, or even at all. You know, I would once and then probably call it a day with those. But I think that's, you know, you would have to concentrate them though. What's going on, Richard? Awesome. That's a great deal, brother. Is it look like this? Let me see. Is it one of those? If so, that's a good deal. They usually cost about 125 to 150, I think. 2-inch. So that's a good deal, man. Oh. But yeah, that's a good deal. $80. Can't get it to play. The old podcast play, but this one doesn't. Well, hell, brother. You're on here. I don't understand. What do you mean? Oh, I forgot to turn that back. I don't understand. Oh, you can't get it to play. Try it from a different source. Try. Are you on the DIY page? Let me see if it's working on the DIY page. Maybe there's something wrong with the link. I never do go back and check them. I probably should. Well, I can see myself on the page. Yeah, it's working on the DIY page. Glad you mentioned that. No, I need to check on something. Okay. Okay. Oh, that's strange, Clint. I have no idea why that's doing that, brother. Welcome to the podcast, though. We missed you earlier. I guess couldn't get to work. I've been getting behind, man. All right, Greg. Upgraded to a 1-inch copper piping for a 13-gallon pot. How can I change lids to a dome type of lid on my pot until I can get with Big Easy? I wouldn't worry about it, Greg. At this point, you know, it's if you're upgrading, I wouldn't worry about it. Or you know, if you want to, you could get copper. You know, and if you're good with working with copper, you know, then I'd probably just go ahead and make another steel instead of trying to combine. Now I'm assuming you got a stainless pot, right? Or is it copper pot or stainless? But I'm assuming you got the 13. Is it the Vever or what do you got? Is it the football? Yeah, pumpkins and squash. I don't know. Is that a fruit or a vegetable? I don't know. Like tomatoes, I always thought that was a vegetable. Now I find out it's a fruit. Vever. Okay. Um, does it have the ferrule on the top? Was it a gourds can be? What's up, Dark? Good to see you, brother. I know I'm getting caught up real quick. Yes, you can absolutely, and I do that quite often. I like adding some and now there's the brown sugar and then there's the dark brown. So if you want even more, use that darker. But all that basically is molasses poured in over table sugar and combined. So you're getting a little bit of both. And actually, I use that as much as molasses. I like that dark brown sugar. I put it on my peach brandies and then get that rum brandy peachy stuff. It's good. Blackberries are awesome, brother. I like them as wine, as well as a shine. I tell you what, Sandman probably makes some of the best blackberry brandy I've ever had. It was pretty damn good, and he's using the infusers, So I'm gonna have to get away from mainline infuser, which works okay, but the multiple infusion jars, that's really it's giving better flavor than what mainline does. I'll admit when my little inventions, most of them work well, but some of them just okay. The inline works okay-ish. Uh, it's better than nothing for sure, and it's just increasing the piping a little bit. It wasn't that much trouble. But I think these multiple infusion chambers work better, and I just can't put enough infusion solution in mine as I could like 3 chambers, right? And it's that successive redistillation with that flavor that really make it stand out. So you're getting like almost a double, triple run with these 3 jar rigs. So that's what I'm going with next, and it makes a really good blackberry brandy. Yeah, and blackberry's great. I like blackberry wine though, so it's hard for me to unless I mess it up, And if it's messed up and it's not a really good wine, it's just not right. That off flavor or something, or just something I don't like about it. Yeah, I throw it in there and make a brandy out of it, and sometimes it turns out to make some of the better brandies. So, what's going on, Richard? Oh, you don't have to send any donations. I don't. I've never made the first penny at this. We'll have some T-shirts and some patches out. I've got some patches and some T-shirts out that I'll hopefully get out soon. I've got designed 8 gallon with 3-inch gooseneck. Wow. That's a good question. Now, as far as temperature, you generally don't hear me talk much about temperature unless it's the cooling temperature. Now, when I talk about cooling temperature, this is what you have circulating around your worm, or you're feeding through your shotgun condenser or through your Liebig condensers. That's really the only temperature I pay a lot of attention to. Uh, But the pot, now, what you're talking about is vapor temperature versus pot temperature. And generally, when I talk about temperatures, I'll talk about pot temperatures. Now, we'll show you a graph here, and I like using this graph a lot. Let me take your comment down and take this out. Now, if you notice on the bottom of this row, this is the proof or the percent alcohol. So 10 is actually 20 proof or 10% alcohol. 20 is 20% or 40 proof, 80 proof, 120 proof, 160 proof, 200 proof. You notice it doesn't go to 200 because once alcohol gets to about 198, 199, it's really tough to get to that 200 proof without either molecular sieves or a vacuum distillation, where there's no air involved. Because once if you have 200 proof that was made with molecular sieves or in a vacuum, once you open the lid, it's hygroscopic, meaning it's going to start like a desiccant. It's going to start sucking moisture out of the air around it, so it immediately starts proofing itself down, right? So that's when it comes to temperatures, though, pot temperatures, before you see something boil, I think ethanol has a boiling point of 173.1. I think methanol is like 145. Let me check that. Hard for me to remember all these. I think it's 145. Thanks for giving me Celsius AI. And doesn't say both. AI, if you're smart enough, you know I'm in the United States, and we go on Fahrenheit. Stupid. 148.5. Okay. Can't believe that wasn't 65 centigrade. You'd think they'd know I'm in America. If that AI had any intelligence, it'd know who's asking and where I live. Anyway, so at 165 degrees or 148.5. It's not even on this chart, right? So people thinking that you can just boil off the methanol by bringing it up to 170, not happening. Nothing happens, you know, just nothing. You can sit that pot. Now, if it were 100% methanol, it'd sit there and boil like mad until it just evaporated, every bit of it. But because it's azeotrope, it's an azeotrope. And what that means is when you mix it with other azeotropes, the boiling points change. So we know that our mash is going to have methanol in there. It's going to have water in there. It's going to have ethanol in there. It's going to have propyl, isopropyls. There's a lot of alcohols and esters and stuff in there. And a lot of them are azeotropic, meaning when you add them together, the boiling points change. If not, that would be so awesome because we could just crank up the still to 185 and just not worry about any of the water coming off and just distill all of the ethanol off and methanol, of course. Or we could just take it to 160, cook off the methanol, and once all that was gone, then we could raise it up to 180 and then cook off all the ethanol and just have water and isopropyls and lower volatile oils and stuff still left in there. But that's not how it works because of azeotropes. So that's what this chart shows, is the relationship of water to alcohol. Now this is just talking about water and alcohol. It's not dealing with all the other stuff. So you'll notice the more water that you have and the less alcohol, see 0 at the bottom here, and 210, almost the boiling point of water. So, but as you add alcohol to the water, even the water's boiling point drops. But on this chart, what we deal with mostly is the 10 and less. That's 20 proof or 20 less, right? So that's, most yeast will do 18% and then die. So, most of your distillates are going to require at least 192 to 197 in that range just to start boiling off, right? And that's pot temp now, not vapor temp, because as that vapor goes up the column, it's going to cool off and some of it's going to condense. So it's actually going to be cooler at that top thermometer than it is in the boiling, in your pot. So we deal mostly with pot temperatures, but that's not real critical. What we do mostly is we'll heat the pot up slowly. You don't want to scorch anything, so but you don't take forever because we say go low and slow, and people are like, okay, it's been 10 hours. I'm not getting anything yet. Should I turn it up? Yes, come on. Yeah. But we start get it hot, and then start backing off and adjusting your drip. So if you got a pour and it's pouring out hard, and you've got a 20-gallon still, adjust it down to where the drip coming off is the size of a pencil lead. It's not a drip, it's just the smallest of streams. If you have a 10-gallon still or less, you want just as fast a drip as you can get. You don't want it, coming out as a stream because it's really too small of a pot to stream. So it will depend in some of these bigger ones, like some of the ones we watched the video on Saturday. Man, it's pouring out of that still like a garden hose, maybe fireman's hose, man, a big, huge steel. So the bigger the steel, the faster it's going to come off, but it'll take about the same amount of time to go through it. Strangely enough, people don't realize that. But yeah, pot temp is going to generally be 192 to 200 in that range. Now, I will say once you get to lower proofs, once you get towards your tails, and you want to run your alcohol out in your tails too. That way you can save it. A lot of people cut it off at 80 proof, and it's like, man, that's 40% alcohol in there. You got that's almost half of that still alcohol. You're wasting. There's a lot of ethanol in there, so save that and run it the next time. Add it to your pot or your thumper the next time. We always loaded our thumpers with it back in the day. But once you get down to where it's 20 20 proof, it's going to be 197. But as you get further down, you have to increase your temperature, and it'll increase on its own too. But you have to increase your temperature to cook off get all the alcohol off there that you can, and save those tails and run them again. Good question, Doris. Thank you. Awesome. Now you got me on bean locks. I'm gonna have to pull up the bean lock. Oh, that's like a hasp. Okay, cool. I didn't know that's what those were called. Cool. Learn something every day. Thank you, Richard. Yeah, that's fine. I'd say that's fine. Just don't overfill it and put too much where you get puking. That's the big issue, is puking. So just don't overload the pot and it'll be fine. 1 inch is perfect coming off that. You don't need any more. Um, that you're good to go for sure. I wouldn't fool with it, and unless you get a new cap, you know. If you're waiting, just put them in the freezer. Blackberries, just bag them up. You don't have to prep them any at all. Just just clean them, throw them in the freezer, and it'll you can stock them up. We've got some places we go during the summer and pick blackberries, and we'll pick some, and some we'll make into jams and jellies, and some of it'll go into a gallon Ziploc baggie and go in the freezer. And once I get enough, then I'll do a wine. I was about to say brandy, but most of the time it just ends up as wine because it just has so much good flavor. And that's what I got, Greg. So I wasn't able to see. It doesn't. A lot of times it won't show stuff if you're trying to post a picture or something. There's nothing wrong with a homemade still. Just have a homemade still, man. That's the best kind, brother. You got the bragging rights saying I made it. I didn't just buy it. I made that some bitch. That's awesome. My first still was a pressure cooker, a big old pressure cooker, and then from that I went to a small copper pot, and then I guess that got stolen somehow, and then I went to keg steels after that, and I did keg steels for a long, long time until I went with a big couple big steels, and then now I use I've got a couple keg steels out there, and I've got a couple big steels out there, big 80s, and then I got that 18 and a half gallon bever. I use it most of the time now. It's just about the right size. I wish it was 25 or something. Would be 25, 30, probably be about the perfect size for a hobbyist. You know, I'm not saying 40 is too big at all. 40 is nice. And 20 is nice too. You know, if especially if you have a 40 or a 35 or something like that, and you want to do a second run, and you can do it in a smaller steel, and that's nice too. Yes, it's about that time. Damn it! Why don't you just say it? Shots. I need a drink. That's for sure. You can tell. Oh, what's this? I don't remember who gave me this. And I don't remember what's in it. But oh, I know what's in this. That's tequila. Oh yeah, that's tequila. That's white tequila. Some of Jeff's white tequila. Now Jeff makes some of the best damn aged tequila. That went pretty quickly though. That's good stuff. Yummy. Hello, Miss Lisa. How are you today? Good to see you. Awesome. I'm glad you asked that, brother. I was just talking about you earlier. We were talking about that grappa you love so much. The big benefit of vacuum distillation is lowering your boiling point. The big benefit of lowering your boiling point, especially comes into play when you're doing like marijuana or gins, where you have botanicals involved, and or any flavonoid that's affected by temperature. And a lot of these phenols and flavonoids and all these things that give us the flavor, the congeners and stuff that give flavor, and esters and oils, um, they're preserved a lot better in lower boiling points. A lot of higher boiling points just totally ruins the flavor, and even kills off like THC. It takes a lot of the THC in it because THC is heat degradable. So especially if you're making something that you want marijuana infused, a lot of people talking about that these days. Um, it's best to do it in a vacuum distillation system. Did some research on it years ago. Thought it was very intriguing, interesting, and I thought I'd come up with something new. And so I do some research, and no, it's being done. And when I thought about first thought about it years ago, there wasn't a lot of people who's just getting started. So I wish I'd have thought about it sooner. But there was an outfit in the Carolinas. I don't remember if it was North or South Carolina, but I do remember it's East Coast Carolinas. I'm pretty sure that was a gin distiller, and they were experimenting with some and real legitimate legal distiller, and they were experimenting with this vacuum distillation. And what happens is when you in a vacuum, it's the opposite of pressure, right? When you pressurize something, the temperatures increase easily. When you vacuum distill, you can lower the boiling point, because when we talk about boiling points on this chart, um, this is at sea level, right? So as you go up in elevations, it'll change. But when you vacuum distill, the boiling points change. The boiling points of everything starts to drop. So you can, depending on how many atmospheres you got in vacuum, negative, you know, um, the lower the boiling point can be. And as you lower this boiling point, a lot of these flavors just pop and explode. It's just like they don't get degraded and eliminated. And, it really, I'd say gins made with this, I would say probably going to start winning every competition out there, because you just can't get, that kind of flavor with high temperatures required in typical, atmospheric pressure distillation. So definitely great for gins. It's even better for the marijuana industry wanting to make infused beverages and infused alcohol, because THC, like we were talking about a minute ago, is heat degradable. So the hotter you get it, that's why when you dry it, you just can't heat dry it, right? Because it degrades that THC and it loses its efficacy. So if you want to make the Green Dragon or whatever, you vacuum distillation would definitely be a route to go, so you can preserve some of that THC and keep that buzz. So for gin makers and absinthe makers and Green Dragon, marijuana infusions and things like that, where you do have botanicals and lots of flavonoids, and even really, I guess the same would carry over to your brandies, just the same, but it's less critical. But you're going to maintain a lot more flavor. You don't lose as much flavor when you don't have all that heat. Yeah, that's what I was talking about earlier. When you increase I was talking about it because you have these, you know, 10, 15, 20 gallon vapor or Vever steels with these little 3/8 inch lines coming off of them. And it builds pressure inside those. And as you build pressure, your temperature is going to increase, right? Dramatically. And you build up so much pressure, all of a sudden it's impossible to make cuts because everything's coming off at the same time, right? You don't have that gradual increase, and it's just basically throwing everything off, and you'll get a lot more water too with it. So you're going to increase the temperature, which is going to increase the water coming off, which will decrease the proof that you're going to come off the steel as well. So, having that larger opening, allows less pressure, and it allows you to heat slower, I guess you could say, through a natural run, and instead of it kind of runs away from you. If that's, I guess a good way to, because when you build up that pressure, it's hard to maintain that proper pot temperature that you're used to, and you're going to have to keep cooling things off to slow it down, because it's going to try to run away from you. And when you do, then it just goes slow, and you probably, run into the cycle thing where it gets hot, cold, maybe trying to regulate it that way. But it's really tough to keep control of your temperature when you do increase that pressure. But awesome questions from an advanced distiller. But has Philby done some pumpkin videos here lately? We had some questions earlier, and I was sending some people over. I know he's done it in the past, but uh, it's getting close to Halloween, so he may want to bump those up and rerun them, or I guess you can search, maybe go to Philbilly Moonshine on the YouTube and just type in pumpkin, and you'll probably pull up a few of the old pumpkin videos. But for those that don't know, that's our buddy Ian Lowe. Him and Philbilly are brothers and from another mother, and very tight and work together. And the Big Easy. Yeah, I was telling him how much you like my grappa. I made a syrup to add, and it was good. Yeah, yeah, just making, just add sugar and water, and a couple of pounds of sugar to a gallon of water. The hell, a couple of pounds of sugar to a gallon of water will get you 1080 syrup, and that's a good syrup to add to anything. Or you can invert. If you want to invert sugar, you can do that. Sugar's a sucrose. That's basically a glucose and a fructose molecule bonded together to make a disaccharide sucrose. So you can break that bond by heating it up to 237 degrees and adding some acid. Citric acid works well. You can use lemon juice, but it's basically cooking off all the water, and it creates a syrup from it. Now, you have to be very careful when you do it. You don't want it to crystallize. You don't want it to caramelize. Caramelizing actually makes it a complex sugar again. So you're taking a disaccharide and you're making a polysaccharide out of it when you caramelize it. So don't take it to the point where it turns color or caramelize. And you don't want it to crystallize either, because you can't store it. If it starts crystallizing on you, the whole thing will just turn to crystal, kind of like your honey does over time. So you have to, when you do it, you have to get a spatula, make sure you keep all the boiling goo off the sides, because once that starts crystallizing, it's like a chain reaction. It crystallizes everything. It's really strange. There are some good how-tos. Maybe that'd be a good idea for Bill to do a simple sugar, because it's not as easy as you think, and you got to keep those crystals out and use one of those little rubber spatulas, and just keep pushing it down around the edge of the pot that you're cooking it in, because once it bounces up on the sides, it starts to cool off, and once it cools off, it wants to become a crystal. So just keep it pushed down there until you reach the point where all the water's off of it. Then you turn it off and let it sit and slowly cool, and it will last for quite some time. It's not the end of the world if it does turn to crystals. It's still sugar. It's still usable, but it's just hard to pour. So, but it's good to use. It doesn't give you the bite. It basically breaks that bond. So you got a bunch of monosaccharides in there, right? Single molecules that yeast just love. It's just like dextrose. That's a monosaccharide. That's just pure glucose, right? And yeast love it. They love that dextrose, and they love glucose. They love fructose. It takes them a little longer to eat fructose, so that's why a lot of your brandies and fruit sugars take a little longer to ferment. It takes them a little longer to eat those, so they're a little slower. But once it's a monosaccharide, man, the yeast just dig that shit because they can eat it. It's like taking a big old hunk of chicken and making nuggets out of it. Man, you just pop them, right? I missed the first part of that. Greg, what you see there, let me turn this back on. What you see there is what we see is OBJ. So I can't see any pictures or whatever you're putting up, but change over time. I thank you. See you on the next show. Great, Greg. We'll be back on for Saturday night at 8 Eastern. So we'll see you then, brother. Have a good one. And yeah, we'll wrap it up here in a little bit, but I got some more questions we got to go through. All right. Dan can help you with this. And 40 pounds of honey, how would you do it? Well, best thing to do is pull up a mead recipe and make a good mead. I do recommend the Lalvin D47 yeast. That's a yeast that does particularly well with honeys um, and meads. It really does. I think it's kind of formulated for that. If not, it just works well. A lot of these yeast, the reason there's so many different yeast is because they selectively breed and create yeast to fit certain circumstances. Like some yeast are designed just for red fruits. Some are designed for your white fruits. Some are designed for honeys. Some are like the rum yeast I showed earlier, designed for the rums. So, but let's see if I can find a good recipe on here. All right, this is on the militia page. Let's see. And we don't have any good mead files on there. I'm going to have to, let me go to my files here and see if we got any good meads in my files. I know I got a bunch of good ones for that. Well, damn it. I guess it helps. All right. Yeah, we've got, but you will need nutrients, so be sure to add your nutrients because there's none in there. But yeah, I've got some orange mead, vanilla mead, mead or mead and moonshine recipes. I've got quite a few here, so I'll look through these and I'll share one of them when I think's best. Here's another honey mead. So I'll look through these and I'll find which one's best, and I'll post that in the. Well, I'll open one up right now so I can kind of get an idea. Now this mead is also called a honey wine. All right, they're going to give us a history on it. This has 1.5 teaspoons of yeast, 3.5 pounds of honey, 2 teaspoons of lemon, lime, or orange. So this is a good recipe. These people know to lower the pH and get the pH. We just use pH paper and citric acid, but you can use lemon. But anytime I see that recipe, I know it's a good recipe because they're talking about, well, then I see raisins. Good Lord. Don't use raisins. You can use raisins for flavor and for wild yeast, but that's not a nutrient, Dan. So use your yan. It doesn't have the yan and fan that you use. And I know Dan uses it in his too. But just get a bag of Fermax. It's like $12 for a pound bag, and that'll last you, unless you do huge amounts, it'll last you a year or two. And it's like $10-12, and it works great. Just do not overdo it. And when it says a tablespoon for X amount, use less than a tablespoon. If it says use a teaspoon, use a fraction less, right? So I always underdo it instead of overdoing it. But this is putting cinnamon in there, which I would not recommend doing until post. Cinnamon is kind of an antimicrobial, and it will kill yeast and it stress your yeast. So this went from being a good recipe to bullshit. Oh, never mind. I don't like that. But anyway, there's certain things you should not do. Anything like yeast, anything like cinnamon, cloves, things like that. It's best to add those at the end. If you want it in your mash, use it when your yeast is down to nothing, because it's just, cinnamon stresses yeast. A lot of people don't realize that, but cinnamon's an antimicrobial, and it definitely will stress your yeast. But there's some yeast recipes in here that I will look through, and I will find one. Now, to get to your big question that you're probably going to ask, 3 pounds of honey per gallon. So 3 pounds of honey for every gallon of water, and use your hydrometer, and you can adjust, but 3 pounds of honey should get you pretty good. Let's see if I can do a 3 pounds in a gallon. Okay, 3 pounds of honey in a gallon of water will be what gravity? And it's 1.105. So we definitely don't want to do, any more than that. Let's see what 2.5 is. I've always done 3, 2.5. It'll be 108.75. So about 2.5. If you want to do 2.5, that'll be probably won't be hot. But what did I tell you, Dan? I think I told Dan 3, and it came out real well. So 2.5 to 3. So let's see. You got 40 pounds. 40. Out of a 2.5, 16 gallons of water. So that should get you just in right about the right spot. 16 gallons of water, all that honey, warm it up, get it all, blended together, and then let it cool down. Add some Fermax. Now, if you don't have any nutrients, you can get you some bran flakes and crumble them up, crush them up, or just use the shit out of the bottom of the box. When you get to the end, save that shit, man, because it's got some fortified. A lot of times, a lot of this cereal stuff will be fortified with a lot of vitamins and stuff, and those are actually good supplements to the Fermax or something like that. So, but raisins will give you a soft mouthfeel, but they also, I don't know if they do anymore, if they kind of kill off. They may spray them with propionic acid anymore to kill off any kind of wild yeast on them, because they're not as powdery looking nowadays as they used to be. So they're doing something with killing the yeast off of them. But oh, he does. That's good to know, brother. It's something I've always wanted to do. I haven't actually set it up, but yeah, it's definitely the way to go. I'm a little behind here again. Right, and it's energy. That's something I wasn't thinking about. Yeah, good point. Definitely saves on your energy consumption as well. So it's a green way to go, man. Let's go green. But I don't know how much extra energy it costs to run that vacuum pump too, though. So you got to think about that too. But yeah, definitely advanced distilling techniques for sure. Yeah, maybe that's what I saw him doing, making pumpkin pie, because that's what I was talking about, the pumpkin pie. That might have been a post, one of the things that he post flavors with that. Probably was. Yeah, yeah, I was telling him a minute ago. You probably wasn't in here when I was talking about that, but yeah, you gotta use your amylase on it just the same as you would corn. Use your high temp alpha and your glucose, because it's starches. Starches are starches. It's like a white shirt. It's just it's they are what they are. No matter who wears it, it's still a white shirt. So starches are starch. No matter what fruit, vegetable you get them from, that alpha and glucose. Now there are some specific enzymes that do certain types of starches and certain things better. Like a beta glucanase probably will be better on a rye or a wheat that has all these, glucose. If you've done it, you know what I'm talking about, how it gets gummy and that clear, thick goo. It's not like the corn gelatinizing, it's different, And the beta glucanase is specifically not designed for it, but specifically does better at those glucans, and hence the term glucanase. That's the enzymes that break down the glucans, and those. So your malts will help break those down a lot, and it's not strange that the malts that are breaking it down are the same grains that create a lot of glucans, like wheat and rye and barley and others. So yeah, that's right. Oh, from blackberries. Oh, what I miss here? Oh, you made some blackberry syrup. Hell yeah, man. That's great. That's awesome. Yeah, we made some blueberry syrup too, and it's great. You can post flavor with that, man. It makes some great stuff. Hell yeah. Well, is it the Vever 5 gallon? If it's the Vever 5 gallon, the first thing I would do would probably be to find a source. And I think Ian and Phil have a gaskets, not for the big lid, but for the small ones that go around these fittings and stuff that go into the top of the lid. And for the they get those, man, and those break. The ones that come with them, they're fragile. Most people tend to over tighten things and they crack them. And if you do, they can be tough to find. I think Big Easy and Phil Billy are going to, if they don't already, I think they stock those. I don't know. They're like $5, I don't know, five some pack for them. And just tell them what steel you got and what size, and they'll be able to. Now, again, it's not the big one that goes around the lid that sits down. I don't know if anybody that has those yet. Um, I know everybody's tried to get them, and those are tough to find. They're like hen's teeth, man. It's hard to find them. But it's but for the small ones, that's one of the things that happens all the time. Those gaskets break. Those little plastic ones break. So I think they're going to start selling those. I think they already do. I think they've had them. But that and move that condenser. We talked about it earlier on here. And let me just pull up a picture of this, and I'll okay. Well, that has a decent sized picture there. Thank you. Let me do a quick screenshot of that. And I wish I could. Actually, I'm going to do it this way, folks. Let me try to do this. I'm just going to share the screen. All right, that way, hopefully you can see my little mouse here moving around. But this is a Bever 3-pot steel, right? And on the top of it, you can see this is an undersized condenser, and it sits right on top of the steel. So you want the liquid in this to be cool. The last thing you want is for it to sit on top of the steel. So yep, that needs to go out. Now this little thumper, it's perfectly fine to sit on that steel, and it's fine. It'll be just fine that way. But the gasket I was talking about are the ones that go here on this, and these little flex lines. A lot of times people replace those, but you see this little gasket right here, over tighten that and it breaks every time. These tend to break. So if you need new ones, get up with Ian and Phil Billy. They can hook you up, and they can get you the pack sent out. But the best thing to do is this coil isn't long enough, and it's too close to this, and this pot is not large enough. So get you a 1/2 inch coil copper. You only need about, for a 5 gallon bucket, 8-10 feet should be fine. For a pot this size, be overkill. And plumb it in to where you can get it away from this pot, and move this thumper. It can sit right on top of that pot. It's a perfect place for it. Let it sit right on there, because that'll preheat your thumper and keep everything warm and good in there. And you want it to stay warm. It'll be less trouble and less buildup. But also, it's hard to tell when you're puking into that pot, and it can fill up on you if you puke into it and you won't even know it, which is another drawback of these. But once you get a few of these things straightened out, you can do better. You can increase the size of this. If it's a 5 gallon, I wouldn't fool with it. You're fine. But they turn out like a 10 or a 15, 13 gallon with the same damn size line on there. Then it becomes a problem. But for a 5, you should be fine. But just run this instead. Run it away and keep your thumper, or I'm sorry, your condenser over here away from your pot and the heat, and it'll cool better. But also put it in a 5 gallon bucket with a little bit longer worm. Now you can attach this to another worm if you don't want to get as much copper, um, and do it that way. But yeah, the biggest drawback on these is the undersized condenser. Otherwise, they do perfectly fine. It's a stainless steel boiler, just like any other stainless steel boiler. So just keep it clean and run it, and it'll be fine. But I like going full screen so I can kind of point to things, and you can use it. They've got this little airlock here, so you can ferment in it too if you want to. But I mean, it's a good little deal for what you got. It's great. Uh, there we go. Yeah, now we're back to normal. Yeah, for the big ones. Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. Yeah, every honey's different. Some will have more sugars. So definitely that's why we got the hydrometer, and make sure that you let it cool after you heat it up and stir it all in and get it blended in good, and dissolved in good. Let it cool because those hydrometers are heat sensitive, and they're designed to work at around 70 degrees. So you have to make slight adjustments for room temperature if it's 80 degrees, whatever, but try not to use it too hot. Right. Yeah. Or boil up some yeast. Yeah. We were talking about nutrients. Best thing to do is just get some Fermax off Amazon or Hillbilly. I guess Hillbilly's probably got it. He's talking about making a nutrient plus a supplemental nutrient. You've heard me talk about people using tomato paste, and I used to be the biggest anti tomato paste hater in the world because I know it doesn't have yan and fan. But I did some research on it because of this bird watchers recipe that's going around, which is a horrible recipe. A lot of people do it. They may love it, and they're making vodka with it. And yeah, anything at 190 proof will be flavorless. But try using that same recipe and come off at 130, and it's not going to be so jolly. Um, but tomato paste, they're saying use that as a nutrient, but at the same time, they're saying use about a cup of yeast, and it's like 100 times more yeast than you would normally use. It's crazy. I looked at the recipe and I'm like, man, that's like a whole thing of yeast. I would do like 10 different ferments with that. And it was asking for all what's happening with all that yeast. They don't even know it, but it's starving for food so much that they're cannibalizing each other as they die off. They're eating each other, killing each other, and that's the stress. But one thing that the tomatoes do add is biotins. Um, there's a lot of nutrients. There's calcium. There's a lot of minerals and nutrients that are very, very beneficial to a fermentation. It's just the fermentation has to have yan and fran, and free amino nitrogen and yeast assimilable nitrogen. So it's got to have those in it before the yeast, just like a big string of, glucose. It's sweet. Hydrometer measures it, but the yeast can't eat it. They're not, So yeah, it's get some Fermax and use that. It's works great. Actually, it's cheaper than boiling yeast and using yeast. So that $10-12 for a pound, that stuff you use just a little teeny quarter teaspoon, half teaspoon, for an average 5 gallon. It doesn't take much, so it lasts a long time. Yeah, I was thinking you could take like a silicone tube and just split one side of it and fit it on top of your pot for that big gasket. I was thinking that too. Just get a silicone tube and just split it and just sit it on top of there, and that would probably work. Except maybe where you join the two together, you may have to overlap or put a little paste or silicone there. But no, you don't want colder is not necessarily better. You want 65 to 75 degrees. In that range is the best, optimal. Now, if it gets 55, it's not the end of the world. If it gets 85, it's not the end of the world. But you want to avoid the extreme too cold. Will cause a lot of the oils that are in your distillate to start formulating, and so they start coagulating, and it's called saponification. They actually start making little white balls in your distillate. And it's like, what is that white stuff floating around in there? A lot of times it's just oils beginning to saponify because A, the condenser water was too cold, or B, because if the proof gets below a certain proof, the alcohol can no longer keep those oils dissolved, so they start falling out. Just like after you make hamburgers, you see that oil in there, it's nice and clear and all that. And then you come back an hour later and it's all white and hardened, it does the same thing in your distillate oils will. So you want to come off at a proper temperature where it doesn't, cause too much volatility or too little. And I guess that's about the best I can muster on it, and I'll definitely read into more about it. But I have done some research, and they say 65 to 75 as far as keeping the oils and everything the way you need them, and so they can esterify later and join with acids and become some good flavors. But that's only stuff that you age. Now you will read a lot of times after the distillate's made, you'll hear about companies cold filtering, and they basically take this alcohol and put it in super low temperatures and get the oils out of it, because the oils upon fire harden and float to the bottom or the top, depending on, and then they just scrape them off, and then, but a lot of people say that that takes a lot of the flavor out as well, especially if you're going to age them. So what's going on down in South Kalaki? I guess you all have the OBX coming up this weekend, isn't it? Or is that North? That's North Carolina. OBX, that's North Carolina, I think. Is that North? Help me out, Ian. OBX, is that South Carolina? That is, isn't it? Outer Banks. I'm going to Arkansas, so I'm not able to go. I guess it's this weekend, isn't it? Let's see. They say anything in the militia about it? OBX. I wish I could search the page. All right, here we go. OBX. No, it's North Carolina. Powell's Point, North Carolina. I wasn't sure. OBX Hillbilly Bigfoot Bash. And there'll be a lot of people there. I think Jay and Amanda tend to go to that. I know that last year they didn't get a chance to go, but I know they like it and they know the people that run it. But it should be a good festival. I'm going to Arkansas next weekend, so I just can't go there this weekend and down there next weekend and all that. So um, I know Jason Barluzzi is going to be there, so there's should be a pretty good crowd. Y'all going, Ian? Yeah, North Carolina. Oh, that's right. You're going to Arkansas with us. You and Sean are going down. So you're not doing the OBX this weekend? I think it's this weekend. Let me look again. Um, yep, this weekend. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday this weekend. I wish I could drag that. Maybe I can. I bet I can do it as a screenshot, though. I like screenshotting. All right, I can add that. Let's see here. There we go, for the people that can read that. Currituck County Rural Center, 184 Milburn Sawyer Road, Powell's Point, North Carolina. Contact Vicki at 252-331-3662 for any additional information, but that'll give you a little info on what's going on. It should, it's always a good celebration out there. Yep, yep, that's where we'll be next weekend. So this next Saturday, you probably won't see me unless we do a remote live. I may be able to twist Damon's arm, make him jump on, and we can do a little bit of live feed from the festival. Should be a lot of fun. They got a Halloween thing going on. They have a big Halloween festival down there every year, and So Friday, I guess they're doing the big Halloween festival, and then Saturday they're doing the music festival, music and moonshine festival. It was a lot of fun last year. A lot of great people down in Arkansas. I love it. The people down there remind me of people in Eastern Kentucky so much. They're all so much alike. It's just kind of like being back home, man. I like it down there. Yeah, real friendly people, country, love it. Awesome. Okay, well, let me pull that up. Let me share that as well. That looks better than what I just posted. It's got Ruby Lay on there from The Voice. Awesome. The Queen of Lungs. Well, let me put that up here. Damn it. If I hit the right button, I will. What am I doing here? Lord heavens. Here we go. Hope y'all can read that. But yeah, it looks live music, Distillers Expo, food trucks, arts and crafts vendors. Got the pumpkin chunking, man. That is so awesome. I don't know if they're going to be using trebuchets or the air cannons, but they're both awesome to watch. I like watching those trebuchets, the old, I guess, military mortars from 1,000 years ago. Those are cool as shit. But those big air cannons, man, they shoot those things into another zip code, man. It's crazy. I think there might be some pumpkin satellites in space. They shoot those damn things so far. There might be some out there in the atmosphere rotating around the planet, man. I'm telling you, they're amazing how far they chunk some of those things. That's cool as shit. If you haven't seen it, go to YouTube and look up pumpkin chunking, and man, it's amazing how far they shoot these things. The flyer. Oh, is that for? Oh, that's for the Ozark. Oh, hell, I thought that was for OBX. Holy shit. So I get to see the gal with the lungs in it. Well, this is awesome. Man, I was sitting there looking at everything except the main thing. Yeah, I know. I'm getting old and crazy. So this is this is for Arkansas. Awesome. Well, I'm glad I get to hear Ruby Lay sing. But yeah, they've got the people doing a lot of arts and crafts, a lot of leather work. I guess I'm gonna take some vests down. I got some leather vests I'm gonna sell. I bought my leather hat there last year, cheap as hell. I couldn't believe how cheap it was. I felt bad. It was so cheap. It was like $20 for a damn leather hat. Nice leather hat. I couldn't believe it. I was expecting a dude to say, "Oh, it's 150 or $120." Like $20. I'm like, I almost wanted to just get two. It's cheap, but I can't wear two at once, can I? But yeah, this is good. Oh hell, I was thinking this was OBX you sending me a flyer for. So yeah, this is a lot of fun. We went last year, and it was a lot of fun. So if you're down in that country or close to it, definitely one not to miss. And come Friday, they do a big Halloween festival. I guess they have a big parade in town, and everybody dresses up. It should be a good time. I'm gonna dress up as an old moonshiner. What do you think? That'd be a good costume. Put me some overalls on and act like a shiner. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm a pose. I'm a poser. I know a lot of people have fun with that. The haters, they'll grasp that. Hold it dear to your heart, bitches. All right, y'all. It's getting close to 11. I'm getting silly. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Tune in Saturday at same time, same bat channel, 8 Eastern time. And I might say, well, I got my buddy Big Easy on here. next Monday, this coming Monday, I might be on Still Talking. So Monday at 8, it's 8 o'clock, right? Eastern. I'm pretty sure. Unless Sean's running late. Or Big Easy's running behind. I don't know how punctual those boys are. But yeah, we'll be on Still Talking. So let me give you a link for that. Good show. Let's see. I think they got a Facebook, but I'm gonna go ahead and give you the YouTube. I almost ended the stream by going to YouTube on that same tab. That would not have been good. It should be my favorites over here. There it is. So Monday at around 8-ish, 9. Okay, 9 Eastern. Okay, I'm glad you said that. So 9 Eastern. This is where you want to go. Monday, 9 Eastern. And if you haven't seen them, man, you gotta check it out. They've had some of the best guests, and I say that because now they've included me. They've been trying to get me on there for a while, but man, they've had some really interesting shows. I had them actually on one of my podcasts earlier. I think it was their 100th episode, and I did a little collage of all their guests for the last 100 episodes. And man, they've had a lot of very interesting, influential people in the industry on there. So if you haven't seen them, crawl out from underneath that rock and check them out. No, I'm just kidding, but definitely go check them out. Excellent stuff, man. Just binge watch it like hell. Give them the thumbs up. Follow them. They have a lot of great guests on there. Do a lot of good interviews, and I mean they have master distillers, not from the show, but actual, people that run distilleries. Kind of like I got Clint here backing me up. Uh, but yeah, there's a lot of interesting people on there. So I mean they've had you all have Nicole Kidman on there, somebody. Just kidding. But yeah, they've had a lot of interesting people, man. Y'all, you got to watch them and check out some of their past stuff, man. It's a great show to watch on Mondays. Uh, definitely add that to your favorite list on YouTube because it's a really good show. But again, it's about 11 o'clock, getting about that time. I'm going to turn into a pumpkin, so we'll figure out how to distill me and mash me in. But I will do a little bit of research on some mead recipes for you, and I'll post those in the militia page. I know Tom and them don't like us putting other people's, especially when they put watermarks and shit like that from their other groups. They go out and they steal these recipes from other people, and then they copy and paste it and then put their watermark on it. And we don't, I don't like doing that. So I'll clean them up if I can find one clean. If not, I'll post it on the DIY because we don't give a shit there. I don't care. I know JB posts a lot of his stuff on there. I don't care if I don't care if they put their watermark on it from my group. Um, doesn't matter anything to me. It's a good, as long as it's a good recipe, that's been tried. And I like the ones that have the acid and stuff added to it. It tells me that they have a little bit more knowledge, but then they add cinnamon and just blow it all. So, I don't know. But anyway, I guess we'll see you guys and gals Saturday night at 8 and then Monday again at 9. And then we'll be back on Wednesday, next Wednesday. But I won't be doing, Thursday, or I'm sorry, Friday or Saturday the 25th, or I'm sorry, Saturday the 1st. This Saturday is 25th. Man, I'm scatterbrained today. But I will be back on Saturday the 25th, Monday the 27th on Still Talking. Mark your calendars and go ahead and check that link out. And over the weekend, start checking those guys out, man. They got a lot of interesting stuff on there, a lot of knowledge, a lot of influential people. I mean, it's not question and answer like here, but they have a lot of people talking and very knowledgeable people talking about a lot of topics and things in the industry and stuff. So it's definitely good to keep up with and listen to. And then we'll be back the 29th, and then we won't be on Saturday the 1st unless we do a live. So hopefully we can get Damon to do a live there at the festival. Doubt it's not going to be a Q&A because I'm not going to be able to do that remotely from a phone or sitting there looking at Damon's little phone or something like that. It's hard to do, or his laptop. I mean, we might be able to do a little bit. I might be able to answer, but I'm not going to be typing answers. I could probably answer them with my voice, but I don't think we're going to be on long enough to do any kind of Q&A. So we'll have a Q&A 25th, 29th, and then we're going to miss the first. But if you can get out to the OBX Festival this weekend, go and support a lot of the vendors there. A lot of these cats, that's what they do for a living, and a lot of their extra spending money, if they have much these days, it's tough. So, go out there and support some vendors and support the festival, and the same in this next weekend in Clinton, Arkansas. Come see us. We'll be there. So it's like me and Damon and Big Easy and Sean Rigsby. It should be a lot of fun, man. It should be a lot of fun. I know Wayne down Ozark will be there. So, and probably Toby. He's from those parts, and we've got quite a few members down there. I met quite a few members last year, and it was great. It was a great time. So look forward to seeing y'all down there if you can make it. But until Saturday, it's good seeing everybody. Thank you for tuning in. We will see you Saturday at 8. And then shine on. Peace out. Love y'all. Bye.